You ready? Okay, this is Commissioner Bill Kanda. It is 5 minutes after 1, and this is Thursday, April 22nd, 2021 at, as I mentioned, 5 after. This is a workshop for our education as commissioners. This is not, I'll remind everybody, for us to make a decision. So don't ask us, what do you want? What do you think? We can ask you for clarification on any of these items, and we really appreciate the opportunity to review the changes that you made since our last meeting. And I liked how you, and I know the other commissioners as well, liked how you presented it, so it'll be easy to follow and to work with. Sure. So I want to caution people that are listening or in here, remember, this is a learning workshop for us to understand better why you did the things you did, or if there's some issues with some things. We're not going to make a decision on how to change it, but we'll say maybe there's an issue here. Okay. So with that, we've got present here is Commissioner Tom Flower, Commissioner Kevin Day. We've got our zoning chairman here, Vic Barnes, and his able-bodied right-hand person for now, Jackie Hobby. I'm in trouble. And so in the room also, we've got Clint, our attorney. And if you would introduce yourselves for the rest of the people out in the hallway, who we have, Reggie?
Reggie Foster, PIO, just me.
Okay.
Daryl Winland.
Daryl Winland. And back in the back.
Kayla Day, Wetmore.
Kayla Day from the Kingdom of Wetmore. And how many we have online? Anybody?
1, 2, 5.
Okay. I want to remind everybody, I'll say it here just in case people didn't understand. You can't raise your hand online here and come in and try to lobby something or make a point. It's if there's an issue that has a need for you to pipe up, then that might be a different story, but we're not here to debate. What do you have a question mark for? We'll clarify it. Okay. All right. Let's get with it then. Vic, you gonna let us go through this from the front and take a look at each one of these? Is that?
I'll be glad to, however you want to do it.
Tom, do you want to take a look at each one of these again?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so, because they put it together very nicely, so it'll play out. Go ahead.
Do all of you have, I revised the one we went through on April 6th, and then you had some changes there. And then a couple of days ago, I sent out a revision of that. Do you all have that? I've got copies here if you don't.
Well, I have, this is what Jackie gave me. Is this the current one, Jackie?
Hand it out.
Jackie.
And that's the one I just did the other day.
No, you gotta hand it out.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
okay.
It's not this now. Okay, I didn't think so.
I printed one off
Yeah, I
of your
had-
email,
You want to know what
It should say at the-
one or?
just in case.
At the bottom,
Okay.
it should say.
And then I also, Kevin, did a clean copy. So you don't have, you can see what we did, but you have a clean copy. Do you want that
Thank
too?
you.
This says document changes. And
Should
what's the new
say
one say?
STR
You want one?
commissioners document
Yes.
changes to.
Definitely.
One or two.
Okay.
I thought we had agreed which ones we were gonna use, but sounds like no.
Yeah, this is the one I just sent out the other day, and
It says Commissioner recommended changes, document 2.
because document 1 is the one that we went over on April 6th.
Got it.
Here's a clean copy for you.
And I found this one
Vic Clinton.
in response, I think, to your
Yeah.
query.
Yeah, I found it too. And
Yeah, if you look at the footnote down there,
Yeah.
supposedly changes number 2
I've
at
got
the very
one
bottom.
extra one. Anybody?
Yeah.
STR Commissioner document changes 2.
Okay, these are the changes. This is what struck out and I highlighted them. And these are the new additions. And then this is a clean copy. Look like the law taken out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we'll step through it then. We're going to start with 910.2. Now, actually above that, there was a red line with
Yeah, Yeah, I'd like to recommend we look at the preamble and determine how we're gonna, where we're gonna insert that, if we're gonna insert it, and what the numbering sequence would be.
Preamble where,
The attorney supplied it.
Clint's,
well, I think
Another copy I gave mine.
this may not be a bad idea. I forgot about his preamble.
Because that will go, as I understand Clint's intent, would go at the beginning of the resolution. Is that
you
correct?
call it a preamble or introduction, whatever you want to call it and how you want to number it, but
Would
that
that
was
be
my
to
suggestion.
the entire document, not just this section?
Just to section
So
nine
just
point
at the beginning of section 10,
Yeah, section 10 or 9?
9, excuse me, 9.
9.1.
Right now, we're at 9.10.
So I would think, and to be honest with you, I prefer introduction versus preamble.
And that is fine with me.
Yeah, I would also.
You have a copy.
That's not a decision, that's just a thought.
I'll give you mine. I'll pull it.
Vic's got a,
Yeah, I had a thought of that if I could. What I thought, and I've talked this over with Jackie, is that maybe a good way to go is you start out 9:10 the way it is with those two sentences up above. And then 9:10:1 would be what?
Introduction.
And then I didn't like preamble either. I thought maybe another title like introduction or authorization or authority would be a better fit.
For these authorities or references, Clint, and how would you like to see it?
Introduction is fine. It's just basically a statement of, what the.
It sets the ground.
yeah,
Yeah, it says why you have the authority to do this and.
Right.
I like introduction myself.
I would think it would actually go, to me, it fits better right at the very front, ahead of the statement that's there already.
So right after short-term rental permit.
I would
No, I
think
put above it is what he's saying.
Yeah,
As an
well,
introduction,
we'd have 9.1 short-term
That's the
rental
heading,
permit.
yeah. And then
And then-
it's introduction right after that.
Insert the introduction and then
I think that's
move
reasonable.
into this.
So then, Kevin, would it be, the introduction would be 9.10:1, and then regulation would go down to 9.10:2, is that?
Yes, that's what he just said.
No,
The 9.10.
It would be numbered.
let me,
He didn't say anything about the numbering of it. He just asked
I think
about where it should be.
where you have basically your introduction here, this would go ahead of this
With no numbering.
with
Oh,
no
okay,
numbering.
Okay,
I think that would be great.
We could do introduction, put this, and this could be actually the last statement of the introduction, which would actually then make it Roman numeral 6.
I would think,
If you wanted to leave the Roman numerals in there.
I think,
Okay, but
don't you think we ought not go with Roman numerals? We ought to go with the other format we have in there and,
well, if you look at what this says, it's just defining STRs as a business like the state does and the federal government. That's all that is. I think that deserves to be after the introduction is 9.1. If you're not gonna put 9.1 for the introduction.
I don't,
It repeats itself, though. It says, again, it's a business. And in the introduction, it already says it.
So then we don't need it at all.
Well, I think the second sentence about how a short-term rental permit is required prior to renting or leasing, that one is separate. I mean, that one should either be another numbered item under introduction, or it can be the first part of, after you go past the introduction.
That's why I thought it should be
Okay.
a 9.1. Jackie?
can we do the numbering after we do the discussion? Because there's one
Maintain.
thing that I would like to change and the numbering could change.
So that's
And then
fine.
we'll decide on the numbering.
But you can leave it like it is, just put the introduction above it, call it introduction.
So, Mr. Chairman, I agree with Vic. I think to stay with consistent use of the numbering system throughout this entire resolution, I do believe this introduction needs to be numbered so that we can reference it if we need to somewhere else in the document. You can't just go back
Or
and
you say
say
it's an introduction
introduction.
to the STR.
Each one of these paragraphs
I agree.
could be numbered and then we could move everything down. And I agree with Jackie,
Yeah.
we might as well wait until we're all through
Yeah.
it because who knows? But I do think they need to be
I
numbered.
agree.
Thank you.
As to Clint's point, then, should we strike the introduction that's already here before Clint's? Since it's already stated as such in that introduction, would we strike the first sentence of the one that's on this?
I would think we could.
I
yeah.
think so.
So we'll strike from all short-term rentals through businesses.
Because it says the same thing.
Right.
And then the next one is a 9.2,
Would you agree with that, Clint?
Yeah.
I guess.
So we're gonna strike
I'm getting all this.
first sentence.
You know, this is just,
And then add the last sentence to the end of the introduction.
Pardon me?
And then add the last sentence to the end of the introduction.
I think it ought to have a standalone number personally. It's not part of the introduction.
Not
Just-
9.10?
No,
It'd be
but
9.1,
that would
it'd be
be,
9 point, what is it, 2 or?
would be considered part of the regulation, would it, of 9.10.1?
Yeah. But I think,
So could we add it first as an A and then number the next two as B and C? Under 9.10.1?
So 9.10.1 would now say introduction.
No, it would say short-term rental permit is required prior to renting or leasing. That sentence. We're trying to get the second sentence of at the top of this document into a numbered sequence.
so it would be 9.10.1, that sentence. After the introduction.
Okey dokey.
Well,
But the introduction is gonna be numbered.
9.10.
yeah, we'll change all the numbers eventually, but
It's 9.10.
9.10.1A would be that second sentence, correct?
Correct.
And then A becomes B and B becomes C.
Yeah. That's exactly the way it should be.
So this starts up here like that. Number sentence goes up here.
How about if I go make you a copy?
Hmm.
How about if I go make you a copy?
Yeah, I got one here.
Okay, the second sentence at the top of the page becomes 9.10.1A.
Correct,
And then the original A becomes B and then C.
correct.
Okay. And then 9.10 short-term rental permit. The next thing underneath of that is this entire introduction and eventually it'll be numbered sequentially.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
I think so.
Good.
Okay. So that's some bookkeeping.
And I guess I was good with this introduction. I guess that would be a question though to ask would be, is everybody good with this?
Yeah, we haven't even talked about it yet.
Yeah,
Right.
so-
We're just trying to get it plugged in the document. So, yeah, exactly was my
So if
thought
we have
too.
any issues, we're not gonna resolve them, but we'll bring them up. We can't unless it's something simple.
Well, we can
Just
we can
understand it. We need
We
to
can make
understand.
changes today,
Well,
correct?
we can suggest
Yeah.
changes.
The decision will be made on the 30th.
Right.
But we make
And
some
if we-
changes today.
Or we may not because we don't agree. That's my point. This is not here to.
Okay, so we're gonna go through the
You have to
introduction.
understand it. So, if the explanation doesn't make sense, that would be one to strike, and we'd have to make the decision at the meeting.
Yeah, the final decision
flag it
comes
as
on
an
the
issue.
30th, but we're here to make changes
We're,
to present on the 30th at the public
that's right,
meeting.
or show that these are issues that we need to resolve by an open meeting where we're gonna make the decision. All right, so I've read through this, but I'm not smart enough here with what Clint had. Can you just step us through the first, the Roman numerals and why you had to reference it, just for the record?
Well, since it seemed to me there was a lot of confusion about what you were contemplating regulating with respect to short-term rentals. First of all, I wanted to set forth the statutory authority that the Board of County Commissioners has to do this through the zoning resolution. That's paragraph number 1.
Okay.
And then paragraph number 2 makes it clear that this does not change the status of a short-term rental to a let me take a look, make sure I'm looking at it.
I think that's.
License does not affect whether it's a residential improvement. And again, that's setting forth the statutory language. Statutory language makes it clear that even though it's being treated as a business, which we're going to do because that's what the IRS does, that's what the state of Colorado does, calls a short-term rental a business. That doesn't change it from a residential status to a commercial status. It remains a residential status and will be taxed as at the residential property rate.
Okay, perfect.
And regulated as a business. The word commercial never shows up in this resolution amendment,
Right,
right?
it's not commercial. That's good. It is a business, but it's not the commercial, it's a residential.
Because that's what paragraph 3 then it explains that
Right.
we are calling it as a business for regulatory purposes for the same reason that the IRS does it, because it generates taxable income for the property owners.
You never did mention the state.
We can certainly put that
I think
in
you
there.
should, because the state, it's very clear,
Isn't that in 4?
Yeah. But the state of Colorado.
but it should be up in,
Subject to tag, the residential rate established by the state of Colorado.
but for regulatory purposes, I mean, it would fit in that paragraph. I think it does anyway.
But the
Doesn't
state
mean it
really
doesn't.
doesn't, I mean, they're classified as businesses, but the state does, I mean, do they pay property tax to the state? I mean, or excuse
No.
me, income tax
State income tax.
on the income that they generate.
Sure. And that's why it's important you have that down here, but if we're making a general statement, that they are classified as businesses, residential businesses.
Well, then I could say the classified as businesses for regulatory purposes for the same reason that the U.S. Internal Revenue Service and the Colorado Department of Revenue classifies STRs as
Correct.
businesses. So we can insert after U.S. Internal Revenue Service, we can add the language and the state of Colorado Department of Revenue.
So where do you want to insert that exactly?
Right after U.S. Internal Revenue Service, I would suggest inserting and the Colorado or state of Colorado Department of Revenue.
Classify STRs as businesses. I don't think classifies,
Department of Revenue.
it should be classified.
That's it, plural then.
Yeah.
U.S. Internal Revenue Service and
Colorado State.
And the state of Colorado Department of Revenue classifies STRs as businesses.
Classify STRs as businesses.
Well, they both classified, so it'd be plural. Correct?
I think, I don't know, my
yeah, it
grammar,
should be classify then.
there should be classify, not classify. That's
U.S. Internal
Boy, my
Revenue Service.
English teacher taught me.
Yeah, since it's two entities
Two,
classifying.
Classify it as, and the other one classify.
Okay, so for the same reason that the US IRS and the state of Colorado Department of Revenue classify STRs as businesses.
Correct.
Because they generate taxable income. Okay.
Okay,
I'm good with the rest of it. I didn't see anything else in there that was. Clearly make a point in number 5 that we have nothing to do with HOAs or POAs.
I think you're gonna hear a dissenting voice now.
Okay, 4, I have a dissenting voice.
I've got one on one.
Okay,
It says, I think this is great, the first part is great. It says, as used in subsection owner's agent does not include an internet hospitality service. And I don't know what you were getting at there, Clint. And then you went on to say that there's no definition of internet hospitality service. I Googled that up. I thought maybe you were thinking about those hosting sites, but when you Google it up, it doesn't say that.
Yeah, what I'm doing in number 1, I'm quoting the statute verbatim. And that statute says, it finishes by, as used in this subsection 1S1, owner's agent does not include an internet hospitality service. I didn't know what that meant for sure. I assumed it meant like Airbnb and DRB and everything. So, but I added that note, the term internet hospitality service is not defined in the Colorado Revised Statute.
And I guess I would question that.
When I read
There's
that,
not a definition. I'm not sure why we should put it in.
well, that is the definition in the statute, but I think,
No, it isn't. He's saying,
There is no definition.
no, but they quoted it.
That's the statutory language. They use the term internet hospitality service, and there's no definition of what they mean by that.
When I read it, I'll tell you what I think it means. This is from my experience. I think it's a business that is going out and providing a catering service to somebody else, is the way I have read it, as a hospitality service. And the state was trying to define that, not as part of an STR.
I just
You could
question
come out of your own home.
if it's a good idea to put in
Right.
something that isn't defined.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Vic.
But if it's a quote out of the
It
statute,
isn't. The note is not a quote out of
The
statute.
note isn't, but
Where the quotation mark ends is the end of the statutory language.
So that is in there, babe.
And I would leave it. That's okay to leave that, but I see no value. That would just add confusion.
Yeah, you don't
About the note.
put the paren in. I agree.
okay,
You're
let's,
talking about the note?
Yeah,
The last sentence, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't put that in there either.
So we, by consent, wanted to strike that.
That paren.
And then you had comments later on. Do you have any?
I have
the second
comment.
one?
not on the second, on the fourth.
Well, I have.
Maybe the fifth.
Can we go down until I get to that?
Mhm.
On the second one, which is 2 there, of course, Clint made that correction on as defined. That's kind of a strange definition of residential improvements, and the only problem I saw here, and it may not be a problem, is we've already got definitions in the resolution of residence. And now we talk about residential improvements, and then they go on down to say it includes building structures. And I'm wondering if there might be some difficulty interpretation if they say residential improvements includes buildings and structures, and then we say you can't use bunkhouses, if there's going to be some
And this,
confusion
this
there.
number 2 to me, the bottom part of it was almost like Westcliff would have when they have building codes and stuff, because it's fixtures and stuff like that. And so I was confused, fences and stuff like that. We don't do that.
well, as an alternative, instead of quoting the language of the statute exactly, I could just summarize it, leave out the quotes and just say that this section says that licensing an STR does not affect whether a lodging unit is a residence. It retains its residential status. Although
What about-
I guess that's the same as,
I would think that would be,
I mean, you can summarize the statute instead of quoting it because it is a little confusing.
Isn't that basically what you're saying in number 4?
it is.
Yeah, I mean, and you can certainly shorten this up. You could kind of consolidate this and simplify it by just, saying the Colorado, make reference to the statute.
But 4 just talks
Gives
about,
regulatory authority for STRs as businesses. It does not change their status from residential to commercial, and doesn't change the fact that they're taxed at a residential property. I mean, it can all be summarized in one I just was putting in as much detail as possible. We can certainly take a lot of the detail out.
So do you want to combine 2 and 4?
No,
No,
4 specifically speaks to tax rates.
yeah, that's,
Okay.
4 is fine.
I would think if we just put in section 3015-401 and ended it at the end, not the end of the third sentence, but at the end of the parentheses in the third sentence or third line, and take out which reads as follows. So in other words, we're just citing that statute.
Right, because everything there is the exact language of the statute, that particular
Right.
subparagraph
Yeah.
of the statute.
And then people can always look that
Yeah.
that up as one, but I think there's no point in adding confusion there if we don't need to.
So I would suggest in Roman numeral 2, striking from the word which reads in the third line, the rest of that paragraph.
Does that accomplish what you want?
Why do we need it?
Clint?
That's what I'm saying, we strike it,
Yeah, I don't have any problem taking that.
Strike
out.
just that.
Yeah,
And then it will
leave the
be
citation there.
for purposes of punctuation, it will be quotation mark period.
Right. No comma, the comma goes
Well, when
away.
you get through writing this,
Okay,
okay, now we're down to number 4.
yep.
Okay, number 4, I was wondering if we could add something. STRs are not classified as commercial properties in this zoning resolution as of 2021. Because if the state changes their regs, I have to go back and change this.
right, but we'd have to amend this again anyway, right?
Why?
That,
We'd have to amend the resolution if the state changes it.
Why?
we don't.
How else you can do it?
If we add
The only way
that
you can-
sentence, I wouldn't have to redo them.
So,
Well, so we have,
Where are you at?
as we date,
it's
if
all
we,
about you.
if we date it, right?
Uh-huh.
And they make the change, then we're gonna have to amend this resolution to incorporate their changes. Correct?
Say it
Regardless of
again.
when they do
Oh,
it.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
say it again, Jackie. What did you?
Never
want to
mind.
add?
He pointed it out.
Yeah,
I
that's
was
right. You
good.
don't want to do that.
We
No.
tried to avoid putting any dates or dollar figures in this document in the event that they do change.
So we don't have to keep
Right.
changing it because of
Yeah,
nonsense. So you
Okay,
good now, Jackie?
I'm good.
Okay, 5, anybody?
5 is me again.
Yeah,
well, fine.
Got an issue with
I
5?
have a comment at 5, but go ahead.
Number 5 is in 10, page 10 of the zoning resolution,
Page 10 or section 10?
page 10.
not nearly as brilliantly. worded.
No, we want, you know. And he's getting paid by the paragraph.
Page 10, A. Page 10 has hardly anything on it. The zoning resolution is not an enforcement tool. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
What are we saying here? That it is? The county does not enforce these covenants. But see, he's stacking out the fact that we're not part of an HOA. We're getting specific. So this is what doesn't reference any HOA.
And the last half of that,
Read it all.
Oh, yeah, the rest of it, but I mean, no. Homeowners Association there, you're right.
So I thought that to save a room, we should get rid of that totally.
The whole thing.
Uh-huh. Because it's already in there.
what about the last half of that? After the property owner association, so where it says, by classifying the STRs as businesses for regulatory purposes, the county is not intending to change or alter the meaning of any covenants now in effect. The county is not directing or attempting to direct the HOAs and POAs to treat their property owners any differently than they would.
We know that that's a given. And page
Well-
10, it just spells it out.
It is, Jackie, but obviously this has been a big bone of contention about this whole thing,
Because
right?
they didn't read it. They
Um,
keep going to the STR
and to-
section.
If we don't at least cite to go to page 10,
That's the way to do
I like the language in 5 better than I like the language on page 10 pertaining to short-term rentals.
So you don't care if it's redundant?
No, not in this particular instance, I don't.
I would still cite 10 because that is, it's more than STRs. I mean, it's all inclusive.
The 10 stands by itself. I mean, what's on page 10? We're just talking about STRs here.
Right.
So it's just specific to STR.
You can reference.
That's why I like to see it stay in there because it is specifically
So you're gonna
concerned.
keep 5 in there?
That's what I would recommend, yes.
Could I interject something? For clarification on that first sentence, then it says, many subdivisions in Custer County have protected covenants or restricted covenants that were adopted at the time of the subdivisions were created and approved. That's not a correct statement because the Board of County Commissioners doesn't approve all subdivisions.
Very true.
Less than 35 acre subdivisions.
Right. And
So that's
so
probably that.
I think I would
Right.
delete that last part and just say at the time subdivisions were created, because there's some that. some
Yeah, that's true.
subdivisions
That'll
we
be
have
not conforming.
that we don't have any, or you guys don't have any authority over.
So you think that sentence should end with, at the time the subdivisions were created, period?
That's what I would suggest.
Mhm.
Technically, we'd have to do that or say subdivisions less than 35 acres were
No.
created and
No.
Because
approved.
you didn't approve all the subdivisions prior to 1971.
True,
So, no,
yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good point. So you want to end the sentence after the word were created, period.
That would be my suggestion, just to make sure that we're not saying something that isn't.
Right, and then
Yeah.
delete and approved by the Board of County Commissioners.
Right.
So strike
Okay.
from and through commission.
And then the next sentence starts with the county does not enforce these covenants,
Yeah, let's get rid of that. That's right.
correct?
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what
So
I
we
would
just
suggest.
deleted that last half of that sentence, okay?
Yeah, I just get it generic like that. It's good. You have a problem with it, Kevin?
No, I
Okay.
wasn't aware of all that anyway, so I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought that up, Dick.
no need.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So,
So we're good.
So we'll renumber it later, huh?
and then will you get cleaned up? Somebody will have that revised.
I'm doing it right now.
Okay,
Well, but
that's good.
we're gonna
I'm
let,
not redlining it, but
it's not the master. You got the master copy. So then we'll compare it, but you're gonna, they'll modify it and that's what will be presented. at
Because
the
what I pulled
meeting
up on my
next week.
email, I didn't get to where I could make changes, so that's what I was asking.
yeah,
My suggestion is that we'll, once we get done here, we'll revise it according to your notes there and then make sure you guys are comfortable with it.
Well, we'll look at it. We don't have to keep going for iterations. You're gonna make the changes. That's the purpose of the big meeting is we're gonna see the changes. We're gonna see them before that, of course. And if we have any issue, we'll bring it up in the meeting. Okay, so let's pass on the next one, right? Trespass on the 9-10-1. We do have a change there. It's on, there's a red border in there. We're good with that.
no, we're not.
Are you on 9? What was it?
9-10.1, the way it's printed there, there's a correction or an addition
It's just-
made. Conditions
it's
in
just
order
in
to
order.
comply.
And that was in what you guys reviewed on April 6th.
Right,
Okay.
and I believe grammatically that should be stricken. I don't think grammatically the word in order is appropriate. That's all I'm saying.
You could put conditions to
That was your
comply.
suggestion, Tom.
I know, I know. When you read the whole thing, grammatically is all I'm talking about. The BOCC may impose additional conditions to comply with the purposes and intent of this resolution. What I'm saying is, Vic, I believe I was wrong.
Oh,
I
okay.
think
So you want to cross out in order?
No, yeah, in order. It's gone.
In order is frowned upon.
Yes, it is. In
First
most
class
grammatical,
writing like this.
yeah, even in legal writing.
In order to be compliant, then let's take that out.
Just didn't-
Vic, you can't hold us to what we did before. That's not fair.
I should realize that, shouldn't I?
I actually thought we did strike that after we discussed it, but maybe.
I think we added it
I
in.
know Tom had it initially. Okay, next one is dot.
And then grammatically, that two needs to be exdented to the left. Jackie,
What two?
910-2A2.
It's a half a
Half a-
digit to the right.
Half a space off.
You're gonna fix
It's all
all
lined
that,
up
right?
under in there.
Not if we don't tell them to.
Well,
I think they probably should.
they gotta get they're gonna renumber it anyway.
I didn't know we were lining stuff up.
Well,
I'm just telling you.
You're gonna get the final version correct, right?
Of course not.
I'm not gonna sit here and nitpick all,
Well, I may.
well, you can, but
I'd like to have this done when we get in front of the public on the 30th.
that's the point. We're gonna see their version that's going to the public before it goes there, Tom, and we can fix that if they overlook it.
and then
And it could still be overlooked.
in 10-2, that's exactly what it was. There was no changes in that on April 6th.
Yes, must have a legal water supply and sanitary
Right.
facility. We all agree.
So the provide proof, everything that's struck out is going away.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because we had changed that at
And number
an
4.
earlier date.
And where are you at now?
910.2, 1 stays, 2
Oh, 4.
goes. We're just looking at the strikes.
Yeah, and then originally you had asked us to take out 24 hours a day, and then on
Wait a
April
minute,
6th.
wait a minute, go back to where we are.
Oh,
We're still
yeah,
on
well,
two.
that was done before.
Yeah, I know, we're just,
So it's
right
fine.
now, we're just saying, good deal, thanks.
Oh, you want to just, okay,
And
Yeah,
we're just going painstakingly.
okay,
Okay.
I'm with you.
Now,
So 2 should read, must have a legal water supply and sanitary facility.
that's it.
Is that correct? Is that what we agree on?
Could you
Because they
scoot the
struck.
two over two?
I did. It's not that difficult.
2 and the 1.
Okay, you're up.
3 stays where it's as it is.
Yep.
We all agree on that?
Mhm.
And then I had a note on 910-2A4. And my note says, why did we strike that? To me, it's important that we regulate these things, even though it's mentioned later on in the document. I still think it needs to be, we need to have this language in there so we can regulate that.
I don't believe it, and so we can talk about it, but we did before, and the reason was you can't, when you get the references, there is no level of trash. How you gonna tell? It's trash, noise, and smoke. You can't set boundary, you can't set limits on.
But it's beyond the property
Right,
Right,
boundaries.
it's beyond it, so if it impinges anything, that,
So when your trash leaves your property, I have a right to go ask you to clean up your trash, and I go to the health department. So I basically,
if that's a regulation now.
no, I basically agree that this should stay in, because this is the number one complaints I get. Smoke, dust, noise.
We're not trying to quantify those things. We're just saying they're a problem. If
Well-
they're a problem, right?
If there are problems, then
If I'm trying to get it simple. The problem is you can get somebody for having too much trash if it goes beyond his boundaries. The smoke, you can't do anything about, and well, how much smoke is good? Out of his fireplace, or is it a bonfire? Noise, somebody's music is somebody else's noise. So that's why if it is an issue, you would take it on a case by case basis anyway, because if they start complaining, whether that is in there or not. The only thing that we already have a regulation on is letting trash get out there, and it's a health deal on somebody else's place, which we already control for all residences.
Well, the noise would fall under disturbing the peace.
Sure.
Do we need to, for example, what if we had the STR does not cause significant impacts beyond the property's boundary?
But you still have a people wanting to police it.
The reason we put that in there was so that people that come here and stay in an STR, or people that are renting an STR, have some idea about what we're talking about. I think parking should be in here too. Because the minute people start parking on somebody else's property and living in that house for a weekend,
And remember,
we're gonna have trouble.
you're putting the burden on the landowner, just like you would if you were a next door neighbor and it's a residence. You're not gonna park stuff on somebody else's property. And so we're pushing it onto the STR owner to make sure their renters know what the,
Yeah, we would be putting it on them if we leave this language in there. If we take it out, then it's anybody's guess. I'm not hung up on the examples, but
what Jackie used to convince me to take it out was the good neighbor thing that you always hand out that says, that every resident has to manage their property, so they're not being a nuisance to the next guy as best you can. But you cannot specify the amount because, like I said, somebody's smoke is somebody else's great flavor, Anyway, that's why, and we agreed that should have been out the last time. That's why it struck.
But it's not the neighbor who's causing the issue. It's the
correct.
renter.
I know, it's the renter who, that's my point. That renter's being treated as the owner by, the owner of the property itself, making sure that renter knows what the rules are, that he has to
But
abide by.
but if it went to court, you think that would be a hard thing to prove or a hard thing to?
That's the point. It is hard to prove. How do you know? What's too much smoke? What are you gonna do?
I think if there were a problem where we had a particular STR that had a history,
Mhm.
if this number 4 were in there, and it doesn't actually cause any undue hardship for them to get the permit. But if the language is in there, if there were a history at that particular STR come time for renewal, then that language is in there,
Well, I think
which
it's
would
more,
help
I agree.
you on a denial of a renewal if we had a
Yeah.
problem with one.
I wouldn't have a problem taking out for example, that whole second line. But I don't see the negative impact of leaving number 4 in there. I mean, it's just clear. You can't have an impact beyond your property boundary.
Which is true for a residence.
Yeah, but we're not talking about residents. We're talking about short-term rentals.
Well, that's a resident, treating it as a resident, Tom. That was the whole point that Jackie made. That owner has to make sure that those people know. There may be one renter that caused the problem. And that owner, if he did nothing to check it and understand it, then he's accountable.
So,
How about referencing back to their good neighbor policy? Just reference that document that owner signed.
Because it's not in the resolution. If we're gonna reference it, we need to reference the stuff that's in the resolution.
Well,
that's true.
but Jackie is, when they apply for the permit, you told us that you made sure they understood. You're giving them a packet that included those, right?
Correct.
And you're gonna treat every owner of a house, whether he's using it for his own residence or for an STR, is accountable to make sure that is understood. So
If you have it in black and white, then it's understood.
that's right.
And right here, it's in black and
So I
white.
would suggest the STR does not cause significant impacts beyond its boundary, and you could reference
You might say, see the good.
neighbor policy.
I'm fine with that.
That's part of the packet in order to get a permit.
Can we strike the example then out of there?
Yes, and then just say, see. the
Otherwise,
debate.
Jackie's gonna be treated like a homeowner association policeman, and they're gonna be saying, go out there, you can't have them doing that.
Well, and I think where this would come into play, like I say, would be come time for renewal.
Mhm.
And then if Shannon's got 6 calls to that place in the last year for noise or parties, where they've been driving their 4-wheelers on the neighbor's property or whatever,
Obviously,
then we have something in here that
You got a careless
that says,
STR owner not paying attention to what he signed.
but I don't see where it'd hurt to have the STR does not cause significant
Right.
I
impact.
agree.
Okay, and then,
Get rid of that
and
word.
then the part of that is reference, you want to
See the good
Reference.
neighbor policy.
see the good neighbor policy?
Yeah, I.e., what do you call it? EG, see the good neighbor policy.
So how would you do it, Tom? Would you put parentheses around trash, noise, smoke? and-
No, we
No,
took
get
that
rid
out.
of it.
They got rid of
You
that.
want, you get rid of all of that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The for example goes away.
Oh, and go, the other stuff goes too.
And then you can put
The
in,
STR does not cause significant impact beyond the property's boundaries.
and then you put IE, I think is the proper thing.
And then you put in parentheses, C.
see the good neighbor policy.
IE, for example.
So we'll insert see good neighbor policy in place of, for example.
Right, that's what I've got.
Okay.
And you've all seen the good neighbor policy.
Yeah. You gave us a copy.
You were a good neighbor.
Gotcha.
And you're giving that to anybody that applies for a residence as well. And they build a building permit,
Not yet.
not a building
Hasn't
permit. I don't mean a
been
building permit. It's when they're applying for,
No, because it hasn't been approved yet.
that's right. Okay.
So then we've got some red line in 9, 10, 2B3, well, 2. I think we've already agreed on that, haven't we?
Yes.
Yeah, that was referencing back to the bunkhouses cannot be rented.
Right. And then 4, are we okay with that?
So, wait a second. You're down below. Is that where you are?
I'm good with 3, 4. I have a
Sorry,
question
Okay.
on it.
okay, so 3, we're okay with the STR owners shall not advertise occupancies rates greater than what is allowed by their septic permit, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
I want, just one thing, Vic, on your paren up above. It's, you see the policy that the STR residents permit. How do you want to say it? That it was provided during the permitting process to the owner. So they know where is that policy to be found.
Where do you see that?
I'm just going back up to the STR does not cause
What
significant.
number? I'm
The
wrong.
good neighbor policy, that's
It-
included in your permit because you have
That's
to
right. So
initial
just
it.
reference it, that was included with your permit, the STR owners.
Okay, so we'll
permit.
put something in.
That way it specifies where
Available.
that is,
Available,
Find it.
available in the planning and zoning office?
Yeah.
that you were given at time of permit, something like that.
I wouldn't want to
Available.
regulate it, but it would be a nice thing for the said owners to have a copy of that in their rentals.
Yeah, it's coming with their
She's gonna do that,
application.
yeah.
That's part of what. goes
So
in,
you have to fill out your application and inside your application, you're gonna have,
The good neighbor policy.
when it comes to wildlife, be responsible and your good neighbor policy.
That's right.
So I just
Just
put,
reference the permit
see the good neighbor policy available in the planning and zoning office.
Easy.
that was provided at time of permit.
Are you okay with that in available?
Okay, so now back to,
So we're down through 3.
so 4. Are we okay with striking the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? And
Yes, just before that, we had made a change to say must be available at all times, and that,
Okay,
we
that's-
thought that was kind of bad. I think originally we had changed it to shall answer calls for the duration, or the last time we put
Yeah,
that,
we did.
must be available at all times. And I was wondering, I'm getting into the semantics because it's always the word.
I thought we did leave shall, not.
I think we struck shall the last time and put must be available at all times.
that's what I've got.
And I am still thinking that it should be shall answer calls for the duration of each STR rental period to address problems. If you put must in there,
Yeah.
So you want to change must to shall?
I think I want to drop the whole thing we put back in the last time. And just say shall,
Be available to answer call.
just shall answer calls for the duration of each STR rental period. Because if you put must be available at all times, the guy goes to the store, he didn't have cell phone service, or he left his phone on the counter, now you've already violated this
Yeah, I think
stipulation
you're
and
right.
Okay, so then the sentence would read, the responsible agent shall answer calls for the duration of the stay.
Yes,
yes,
What you're after.
that's what I was thinking here.
I think that's a good change.
If that's agreeable with everybody, it didn't flow good to me the other way.
Okay, responsible agent shall answer calls for the duration of each STR rental period to address problems associated with the STR.
Correct.
Sounds good to me.
And that way they know they need to be available, but if they miss a call, they should be able to answer a voicemail or something like that and not have to
That's right.
physically.
They'll get there and get,
That
Get their
almost seemed a
response.
little too,
And then we took out 5, correct?
24 hours conference.
So yeah, the VoIP,
Yeah.
but there is.
yeah, that's all struck number 9.
or it was 1, I'm sorry. Originally it was a number 1, but
Yeah.
it came out, okay. So now 5 is the STR owner must notify the planning and zoning office within 5 days of a change in the designated responsible agent.
Yeah, that didn't change.
Okay,
Good with that.
6 was struck and a new 6
yeah,
into being.
which I have problems with that whole thing.
This is where Clint was having a problem. I can't-
On the notify within 5 days, is there a penalty if they don't? Or would that be outlined? Would they lose the STR?
No. Unless that was just one of many they had.
I mean, because if you got somebody that excels or you can't get a hold of them for past 5 days and whatever.
Well, that,
What's the penalty for that?
you still have a penalty thing. We still gotta go through penalties later, but there's gonna be other.
Should that address to the penalties or just later's gonna do it?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some other things in here that we say you got to do this, but we don't address the penalty phase of it right there either. So I think.
So in the penalty pieces, you'll see, we're not addressing this in 5 days. If you go beyond 2 weeks, you're thrown in jail.
So I think number 6 that is highlighted yellow and struck, I believe needs to be in there.
Number 6, the struck says the STR permit shall be transferred.
Shall not be.
Shall not be transferred or assigned to another individual, entity, or address.
Correct. I believe that needs to be in this document.
Okay,
The
so
the reason that was struck out is because of Clint wanted to put in that one sentence about you can transfer from a
Right.
buyer or seller, and then we put that sentence as the last sentence in paragraph 6 where Clint rewrote it, but it says the same thing.
We agreed, I thought, on this new.
You want me to read it?
Because,
Yeah.
Is the red correct now?
What's that?
Is the red what we agreed to before?
no,
No,
Because I thought we agreed that.
the red is,
The red is what you told us to
no,
do.
we did not.
Yes, sir.
Sir, I hate to be argumentative. The red, number 6 red was
Yeah.
Clint's language. We did not,
No, what you asked me to do is put in Clint's language, which is sentence number 1. Okay? And then this transfer will be administrative action of the planning and zoning, which was some of the other stuff that we eliminated down below. And then you asked me to take this last sentence, the STR permit shall not be otherwise transferred. That was number 8, and then you decided it should go up to number 6.
That's
And
what I
so
remember the discussion.
that's what we did on That's what we decided on.
Because it has to be able to be transferred.
So it was on our original changes.
But the first part of that, an STR permit, once issued for a specific property, may be transferred to a subsequent purchaser. That was Clint's language. We did not put that language in there.
We sent it.
No, this came back to us this way.
That's the first change right there, and it's in there.
And
This is Clint's language, right? Correct, Clint?
It probably is Clint's language, but we added it on the first go around.
And the issue was, you've got to be able to not be charged every time you renew it, was part of it. And
Well, I had a question on that. If this is staying in here, it may be, and I guess this would be a question for Jackie. If we end up leaving this in here, we state that it will not be assessed well, here on 6 and then on 7 later, will not be assessed an application fee. Should there be a fee when it does, if it is transferred to a new owner?
I believe it should myself, yeah.
I
the,
would think, because I know during our conversations, I thought we agreed to put this in because of some situations, so that if an STR that was under management by someone was sold to a new person, they could go ahead and re-register it and not have to go to the end of the line.
right.
Correct.
But I would think there's still costs associated with that in Jackie's office. And so I would think that the application fee would need to be in there myself, but I guess that's a question for you, Jackie.
I thought,
If we're gonna be consistent, then consistency would be, and I'm just gonna use a special use permit. A special use permit goes with the owner. And a special use permit cannot be transferred. So if I buy your business or property and you have a special use permit, it doesn't automatically mean I get the special use permit. I have to reapply for the special use permit and I got to pay the fees again. So I believe that we need to be consistent in this document where that would be the case for the short-term rentals also.
okay, that's a thought. There's different SUPs. So if you got a subdivision you made and you buy a house, you sell it to somebody else, you're not reapplying to be part of the subdivision.
But the subdivision's already been
That's
approved
right.
and that doesn't have
so-
to, no.
But let me finish. The thought was, we are taking a piece of property and we're classifying as a residential business, not a residence. And
But
that
then-
permit is the one-time charge. And
If
then
it's you.
Yeah, and if you sell it to somebody else or to management, then it's already been approved. Maybe it would be a fee to take ownership of it. Maybe that's what you do, is you don't reapply. Otherwise, you're gonna be jumping into the back of the line.
Well, no, we talked about changing the language so you don't go to the back of
That's
the
right.
line, right?
But where is that in?
Well, it's not in here yet, but that's what we talked about before.
Well, and I think that's why this 6 got put in here, because of the language in
Right.
this says it can be transferred.
See, it's already classified as a commercial business and he's gonna keep it as that. So you're not redoing the whole process. That's my point.
The reason this was put in here is because we had testimony several times, primarily from one individual that said that it was going to be damaging to his business if he had to, if a property that he's managing is sold and the new buyer wants to do an STR, then.
Then there's a hiatus in being able to rent it. That's the
Right,
point.
and so that's when Clint, and this happened about 4 or 5 days before
And that's fair.
our April 6th meeting, and April 1st
Yeah.
is when I got the deal from Clint, and he suggested putting that in there. I assumed he had talked with
So
you
Clint,
guys.
how did you, what was your thought when you, because what we're saying is true. A guy sells his business to another guy that's gonna operate that business. You can't stop the business in the middle and then start all over. So where's the language gonna be it's gonna be allowed to be transferred and continue operation,
May be transferred
or maybe,
if the new purchaser of the property, the new owner, wants to continue running it as an STR.
It can be transferred without causing it to be redone. It doesn't mean you don't pay a permit.
Yeah, I don't agree.
Otherwise.
If an STR exists in a house, in a residence, right, and that residence sells,
Mhm.
they're not buying a business, they're buying that residence.
No, if they buy the residence, but if it's a guy that wants to come up here and take over that business, that was the whole point. There was a group of houses that were being managed as a business, and that person wants out of the business and somebody wants to step in and own the business.
Well,
Meaning all the residences that are part of the STRs, you should be able to continue operating.
Yeah,
If
I don't
it wants
agree.
to be a landowner, that's different. A
I don't
residence.
agree. I think one of the downsides here is a residence could then, with this language, be sold 5 or 6 times.
Mhm.
Uh,
As a business.
No, I said a residence could be sold 5 or 6 times, and we would never have any regulation on that, except for the initial document that was the permit that was issued to the original owner.
Right, I understand. That's why that's why you have to transfer the permit
No,
to
you
that
don't
new
have to
owner.
transfer it. You don't have to do anything.
Listen for a second. In order for Jackie to be aware that it's still gonna be operated as a business or not, you have to have that new owner, either he's declaring he's gonna operate it as a business, or he's gonna be declaring that he's gonna move into it. If you're
Right,
gonna
I agree
continue it as a
100%.
business, then you don't want it to be, not be able to be rented if that guy has to go back and start all over again somewhere else for a permit.
But we're, in my opinion, in what they're having
That's what I
in Colorado Springs is it's not people we're talking about individual people buying residence. If we don't have some type of control on transferring that or not transferring it, you're gonna have corporate America walk in here and buy 40 houses and you're gonna be dealing with corporate
It could
America.
be, not even
That's
corporate,
what
it could be
could
some,
Yeah.
sure.
You've got to control that,
Right.
and keep them out of here.
Yeah, the whole point of this is to regulate STR.
Yes.
But that's
Right.
why you would,
So-
why wouldn't you then be looking at the transfer permit? And that would be part of the process. You look at it to see if that's gonna be continued to be used as an STR. And then charge them the fee.
Well, number 8 that's here, which is, it was stricken out now, but an STR permit in good standing may be transferred to a new property owner. But in good standing, and so it has to be in good standing first of all, and it may be, it's discretionary, at least initially, on an administrative basis by the planning and zoning office. If there probably should be some kind of an appeal process, or think about that if Jackie doesn't think that it's in good standing, or there's some other reason why the transfer should not be allowed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, what if there was a cease and desist order put on one,
Yeah.
and then somebody else comes and buys it?
And then he wants to operate it as a business.
Well, if it's not in good standing,
Right.
presumably
Start
it's
over.
gonna all be reflected in the.
Because you lose your
records.
permit.
And could you repeat yourself, Jackie? And I know that might be an apple and an orange, but you said other SUPs, if something's,
All other variances does not go with the property. It goes with the property owner.
Right.
And the best thing to do in my personal opinion, is in a document is we need to be consistent.
Right.
So if all the other permits go to the property owner and not the property, then let's be consistent and say this goes to the property owner at the time. I believe if I buy your business, which I believe you have an STR and I buy it, you need to come in because I need to know,
Right,
and there should be a charge,
right.
and you're starting all over again.
But can you keep the place rented? See, that's the piece. If it's in the middle of the season and they got people coming for them and lined up to be
Of
already
course you
booked,
can, because we're not going
you're
to
not gonna stop the use.
stop, no, we're not gonna stop the usage. But if I buy your short-term rental
Mhm.
and I don't come to that planning and zoning office and put that short-term rental in my name
Right,
and pay a fee,
that's right.
then you've lost that short-term
That's my
rental.
point.
Yeah, and that, to me, that's up to the buyer and the seller to determine whether they're gonna have to shut that business down or they're gonna make it the continuity so they never have to interrupt it.
Right.
That's not
And
county's
that's just part of
responsibility.
good business.
That's
That would be the
That
business.
was my point. And so they can come in and ask for, the transfer of that permit to that new owner and pay a fee and not shut down the rental.
I don't think that's what you just said, is it,
That's what she
Jackie?
said.
No, they
I
have
just-
to, okay.
It's either we're gonna let them transfer or they're gonna have to come in and apply for a new permit.
Right.
One of the two.
Right.
And I believe they should have to apply for a new permit.
I do too,
In their name.
of
I mean,
course.
you have to transfer, the fact it's, well, I guess we're using a term, transfer. They're gonna continue to operate as an STR. It's a business already. And if it's gonna continue, then that new guy has to pay a fee and get the SUP in his name.
I think some of this comes down to the very last thing in this, which would be our density. Maybe we should speak to density before we go through all of this, because depending on what we do with density has a lot to say about this, because everybody's worried they're gonna have to go to the end of the line. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, we have lost some of our STRs since we started this process.
Yes, some people have sold their short-term rentals and, but I had an interesting phone call because this gentleman, more than one gentleman, had started a business and for a fee, he'll track all the STRs. And he wanted to know how many STRs I thought Custer County had. And it says, well, it's hard to tell because a lot of them drop off in the wintertime. They don't rent in the wintertime. But I said, at this point, I think I've counted 58. I think that's what we had on our sheet. And he says, well, I'll let you know that you have over 100, whether that was a marketing ploy or what. But he was arguing with me about, so I do think that better
Well,
do the density.
So
we know people that have sold their short-term rentals and they went on to the long-term rental market, right?
Correct.
So yeah,
So
it's
what-
happening.
let's go back to where we are. It says the transfer will be an administrative action by the county planning and zoning in which a new owner must submit an updated application form, but will not be assessed an application fee. Now, we can, the new owner should be, I think, if it's a new application and his name is a transfer, and there ought to be a fee. for that.
Correct.
That's
Yeah.
true in anything you do. The permit shall not be otherwise transferred or assigned or conveyed to another individual or entity, nor shall be used to update STR.
This was an issue that when we did our revision after the April 6th meeting there, and I put that together, Jackie and I put that together and sent it out to the planning commission. One of the issues was charging a fee, and Daryl raised that issue because Daryl's done a lot of research on that, and we would be an exception, if I understand it right.
Exception to everybody.
Virtually everywhere else charges a fee.
Right, that's right. We
And
should-
I would support this because there's more, it's gonna put more load on the planning and zoning office. And if those, I know the fees might go to a general fund, but you could still direct those back to help Jackie. So it seems like to me it's a good idea.
I think a transfer fee, it's not.
That was really nice of you to stick that in there.
There needs to be a time frame in there as well, because if I sell my property, do I have a year to
No,
come see you?
that's exactly what I was gonna say.
You have 5
Usually your
days.
deed takes 30 days. And I gotta see the deeds in your name.
Yeah, it's when- whatever time it gets actually transferred to the new owner.
So 45 days from time.
I would just put when the legal documents are in the new owner's name.
When he takes
Well-
possession of the property.
He may not want to come see you at all.
Right.
So what difference does it make?
But the old owner knows if he's transferring it.
Well,
And
And
then if I find out from upstairs that I have a short-term rental that transferred and they haven't come in, then they're done.
so you already know.
well,
Well, that's just,
yeah. I believe we should put number 6 back in there and strike the first sentence, or the first, yeah, I think it's no, first 2 sentences of the red line, number 6. I think this last half of the red line, number 6 would be redundant, but I do not believe we should allow transfer of these permits to
Well,
subsequent
that's a
owners. I
decision
think
we'll have
that's
to
a
make
mistake.
then that day because I disagree. You have to allow for that.
No, you do not, sir.
Well, I think you do.
Okay,
You think
thank
don't.
you. I appreciate that.
Daryl, what's other places say?
They, from what I'm reading is they treat it like there are other SUPs. If it's being done like the other SUPs, it's just redundant.
Mhm.
It makes it simple. You don't have something separate. Which if you separate things, you're setting yourself up for a possible lawsuit that you're singling yourself out.
Mhm.
And I think we should be consistent with how we handle other variances. That's my argument. So if we want to postpone this until we get in front of the public, I'm all right with that.
I've been pounded the whole time I've had this job, consistent.
Be consistent with.
This document needs to be consistent with all the other documents. Can't say, oh, that one's different from this document.
Right.
So I agree with Tom, the STR permit shall not be otherwise transferred or assigned or conveyed to another individual, nor shall be used to operate an STR. I don't get that sentence actually. Clint, why did you put that in there? Clint?
Yeah, it's a process to allow it to be transferred, but only through the process that is set up here. They can't do it outside the
their own.
process.
Okay.
So the first half goes away, the second half would go away.
Yeah, I
Basically,
think so.
that last sentence is the same thing as the struck out number 6
Right.
there. Clint just put it in different words, but it just says you can't do it.
You can't do it unless that you're part of the
Yeah.
process, so that you got track, you know it's always an STR, you know it's there, it's not being sold and then out of the realm of being regulated.
So are we saying the old 6 stays and the new 6 goes?
Well, I think we're at an impasse.
Well,
I think we decided to wait.
And I think it should be able to be transferred and be allowed to continue as an STR if the new owner wants to make it an STR. That's why he's buying.
Well,
It's,
we wouldn't know that's why he's buying it. He might be trying to buy a house to live here.
well, but if he does that, then you get rid of you don't have the permit, doesn't have to be transferred.
But if we do something like
Turn it
I'm
into a
agreeing with Kevin, if we do something with the density and
Mhm.
everyone has a mile circle and you have a short-term rental and one of you is grandfathered in, then when that one falls off, you can't allow another one back in that circle.
Right.
I'm going in there.
Well,
But to me, the density thing definitely needs to be addressed. I don't think the density plays into number 6 that's struck out here.
yeah, I don't think that either.
But
Well,
I guess it
it
could,
would almost make
Jackie's-
it a moot point if there was not a density cap, then it doesn't matter because they can come right back in and apply for one and rather than going to quote unquote the end of the line and have a waiting list.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that was why I had the question with Jackie as to what our numbers might be. Because I was thinking possibly at this point and try it for a year and see what it looks like without a density. And if that's the case, then we wouldn't have, then this whole argument on number 6 goes away. Because I think that's why there's a difference of opinion.
It's true because
because of,
Because of the possibility of a density cap and going to the end of the line. And that's what brought that whole conversation up.
Yeah. It's
So
not from my perspective, but I understand what you're
That's-
saying. Yeah,
That's what I'm seeing here.
okay.
So that's
Yeah.
why I asked that question. I thought we might be able to forego some of this
That
if
could
we
change.
address that.
Right. Yeah, I look back at the whole reason we ever started this whole mess was to get a handle on and be able to regulate these short-term rentals. In my opinion, red number 6 is contrary to that. It just gives them an in perpetuity pass. Once you've got a permit, you've got it forever unless there's a reason to cease and desist it. And I just don't believe in that. I think every business needs to be regulated. If it's another business sold, Westcliff Meat sells, they're gonna have to come back here and get another SUP, get another variance. No question about
New
that.
owner will have to get it in his name.
So,
But Tom, any business, if a guy wants to sell the village shop and still have a village shop, you don't change, you don't worry about you're buying the business.
yeah, he would have to go in though and get all the new
That's right,
business
get all the licenses
licenses.
and
Which is
all that,
what
which
we're
is what
doing.
we're trying to do.
License and so.
So that, I believe.
There's really only 2 things in this whole document that, not to be dramatic, that I would be willing to fall on a sword about. This is one of them and the caps is the other. Because I believe those 2 things go to the heart of why we're doing this, and that is to regulate and manage growth in this county. And I'm not arguing with you, Kevin. I think maybe we should look at density at some point here if we get out of the rails. Maybe we ought to talk about density now. I don't know.
Well, let's keep
If it's a
pressing.
driving factor.
But I have the same opinion, but we all have a different opinion. I personally don't think, I think the density will take care of itself. And you always, when you are issuing the STR permits, you are looking at the density at the time and the issues that are there. That's always a possible. And once you're in, there's no reason not to continue an STR. One reason we care about STRs is economic value to the county, another business. Money for the county and tech, as well as tourists and the restaurant business and all that. So, if we arbitrarily, we can always change the density, or decide not to let that permit go, a new one. So, even the STR business itself will take care of that. You're not going to advertise, and capitalism will make it work. But some places aren't going to be amenable to an STR anyway. You can't get anybody in there or water. Anyway, we can discuss that. Since we all have an opinion.
So there's no decision on 6 then, right?
6, 7, 8, all the way to the bottom of 8, they all tie together.
Well, I think 7.
7 stands on.
7's okay
Seven.
because that's,
Yeah,
But I like to get rid
I
of.
think we would
the-
I would strike at no charge.
okay, so
I had that.
Thank you.
You got to fix that.
so you're proposing then 7 says an STR permit in good standing must be renewed annually as an
With an annual
administrative
fee.
action.
Tom,
But yeah, well, it'll be in the fee structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but we need to put in there with
Okay.
an annual fee.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what we had before, then we took it out.
Right. And
Okay.
6.
Do we have to state that it has according to the fee structure, or just strike at no charge? Because
Strike it, don't charge and put with annual fee.
With an annual fee.
And on 6 above, the same thing applies. There will be a fee. I don't know why we said not assessed an application fee. It would be a transfer fee.
yeah, if it stays, so.
So an STR permit in good standing must be renewed annually with a renewal fee, right?
With a renewal fee, yes.
And an appropriate renewal fee.
Fee as an administrative action by the planning and zoning office. Obviously, the heart of that is that it doesn't have to come back to the Board of County Commissioners to be issued a
Renewal.
That's why we don't have to look at a renewal.
Right.
I'm good with 7.
Okay,
Now,
Yeah.
we have a struck number 7 as well. What do we want to do about that? Shall expire 1 year and must be renewed annually. Those two really are the same thing.
No, I think this one was related to the fact that,
I think the 7 covers the old 7.
Okay, so the old 7, are we in agreement it can be struck?
yeah,
Both of them.
yeah,
There's
there's
two.
two sevens.
two
Okay, I'm talking about the
Yeah.
second, number 7 right
Yeah.
now.
So I would say yes,
Okay,
I
the
agree.
7273 that are all struck, I think could stay struck.
Okay.
And
And I disagree. I think that number 7, an STR permit does not authorize any person other than the permit holder named therein to operate an STR on that property.
Well, there's the point there, Tom, was there are STRs that have hired property managers. They operate. That's
Okay.
the whole point there.
Okay.
Yes,
They're agents.
Okay, got it. So
so that, they still the
then
homeowners.
the permit holder or agent?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you live with that? Add a or agent in there?
Yes.
This is that first number 7?
Yeah, STR permit does not authorize any person other than the permit holder or named or agent.
Or agent.
How about or responsible agent, because that's what we've
Put
used.
that language in there.
That's true, because
that's the language we had earlier in the document.
and that's the way it should be, because that owner is not gonna be operating it at all.
So remember this, your application, you got the landowner and you got the agent.
Right. And so that's why that has to say that,
Us or the responsible agent. Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
and you're gonna get a fee.
So I'll read what we've got here.
So that should, depending on what you do on 6, you leave, we haven't decided there, but that will be the new number 7. And then the number 7 below will be 8, then, is that correct?
That's what I'm guessing, yeah. So the 7 after the red number 6, an STR permit does not authorize any person other than the permit holder or responsible agent named therein to operate an STR on the property.
Perfect.
Okay.
That's the way it should be.
All right. Just a
Put
second
authorized,
here.
I guess I better put responsible.
Yeah, you be
That
responsible. over
lets
there, mister.
Jackie and I both out.
Okay.
All right,
I don't know why I cannot. Okay. And then what about the struck number 1? Does it need to come out of there? Are we in agreement on that?
where are you?
I'm right below the number 7 we just dealt with.
I haven't
Oh,
struck
see.
number 2.
It's 2.
It's two. There's no one on my shot.
Okay, so this one I do have, so it must.
Is that are you talking about the number 2?
My
Location
number
and
1
size of parking.
says site plan.
Oh,
So that must have come out before.
A site plan, right, Ken?
You're one change behind then on that.
Yeah,
Can I say something?
That one there, that item there is of all the information you gave us after that April 6th one. That's the only thing that Jackie and I, you didn't strike it out and we struck it out. And the reason we did is because that document that Tina gave us, you didn't say strike it out, but you had a question there, say, why do we need a site plan? And
Right.
so Jackie and I talked about it, we decided to take it out. So that's the reason behind it.
Okay.
Can I say something regarding the transfer? Sorry to go back to that.
Oh, all right.
I'm
Go
sorry. This is regarding selling a house with an STR in it. Airbnb requires you to reestablish the account. They do not transfer,
Right.
period.
Right. It has to be in the new,
It has to be in the new owner's name and the old owner ceases to exist.
right. That's what we're saying here.
Okay, so I just wanted to, if Airbnb's doing it,
Yeah.
why would we not?
That's right.
Okay.
So I've got permits that are not renewed on time will be terminated. That was struck.
Why?
I don't know. I'm bringing that up to ask.
Where are you?
Well, here's what's weird. I am on STR Commissioner Document Changes number
Oh,
2,
you're on 3.
but I'm on my computer and it apparently is different than this one.
Well, it's number 3 on this one. It says permits that are not renewed on time will be terminated.
Right. Are we gonna leave that in or leave
I-
it struck?
No, I think you need that in there.
I do too.
Well, why was it struck?
Because that's what I can show you the document. That's what you
I
gave
thought
us.
we already
You
said
struck it the first time when Tina gave us that.
permits that are not renewed.
Yeah.
on-
So I think it needs to be in there myself.
And I have and then did
But
you
what's-
and I strike the site plan?
Yeah, that's what I just was explaining is because you didn't strike it, but then you did ask a question in there, why do we need it? And then Jackie and I talked about it and we thought, well, if there's a question about the site, we're gonna have a site visit anyhow. So maybe we don't need it. So that's why we struck it out. But if you want to back in.
The only thing I had in my notes, I didn't say anything about striking. I had a expiration date. You're gonna need a window. You can't have one date. You need within a certain amount of time after it expires.
Permits that are not renewed on time, expiration date, that would be like,
So,
you get a year.
well, whatever it is, you need a window of time. When does that have to be renewed? At let's say it's March 30th. And that,
When did you take out your application?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so
So
if
if you took out your application, you got 30 days, like the airport,
Okay, it's 30 days after.
the expiration date.
That's okay. So say that. All you did was say expiration date. I don't know what
So
that
instead of expiration, say within 30 days of expiration date.
There you go.
Yeah.
So permits that are not,
Renewed.
permits must be renewed within
30 days of the expiration.
of or after.
It says permits that are not renewed on time.
Within 30 days. I think.
Within 30 days of the expiration date.
That's all you
Not
need to say.
after, I didn't mean after, I did say
Okay, well,
that.
within 30 days means it could be within the 30-day period after it expired.
Before,
Okay,
Just like a car,
so
no,
you get an extra
No.
month.
no, we do it like the lease, the airport lease.
No, that's right. you
It
have
has to be done beforehand.
But
Okay.
within 30 days after the expiration date.
No,
before.
Before the
It's just
expiration.
like the airport leases, all the other.
Okay, whatever it is, that you need that window of time. It needs to be specified. So if it's
Okay.
30 days before the expiration
We
date.
got that.
So permits must be renewed, right?
Uh-huh. 30 days prior
To the expiration date.
to the
Within
expiration.
30 days.
any, not at
Permits that are not renewed on time, they're not renewed within 30 days
of
of
the
the
expiration
expiration
date.
date will be.
That's
Well,
good. That gives them 30
My
days to
point,
get it done.
Vic, is within 30 days could be within 30 days after. That's still within 30 days of the permit. Yes, it
He
is.
said before the expiration.
No, he didn't. He
30
said
days
within.
before.
Within is what I said, yeah.
Well,
So it should be
I'd say
within the 30 days.
prior to
Prior
the
to.
expiration date.
Prior to the
30 days
expiration.
prior.
Okay, I like that.
That's how I was.
Permits must be renewed 30 days prior to the expiration date. Is there an expiration date on these permits?
Yes,
Okay,
1 year.
1
1
year
year.
after they give.
and it says in here. Your
Or-
permits are good for 1 year.
the permit will be terminated, correct?
Yes.
Mhm. And they have to start over.
What did we decide to do about the site plan? Did you guys decide?
It was out.
It's out.
You want it out? Okay.
So let me read that, Jackie, to you, huh?
Yes.
See if I've got it right. So permits must be renewed 30 days prior to the expiration date, or the permit will be terminated. The owner will be required to submit a new application if an STR permit is desired.
Perfect.
Okay. I can live with that.
Okay.
Where the heck are we? My notes? Oh my gosh. So 9, huh?
Where's 9?
Well, it's 8. I'm doing the numbering as we go.
As we go, so
So the old 8, red struck, or yellow, red and yellow struck number 8.
An STR permitting good standing can be transferred to a new property owner administrating. And that was struck because it was included in number 6.
Correct.
So that can go away.
Yep.
Correct?
Yes.
So it's redundant.
Mhm.
Like to be consistent and not redundant.
Mhm. Okay, let's see, that's 9-10-2-4, right?
We're moving,
No, 9-10-2-B.
yes.
What that was.
Right.
9-10-2-B-9.
So we're finished with that, except
Except for, there
5
was,
and 6. Or the 2 6s, right?
well,
No, 6.
I don't know, are you just talking about that one section?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you're
In
right.
B.
B,
B, yes.
9-10-B.
Yeah, we're through B.
Okay.
Now C. And we didn't
I
have
didn't have anything in C.
nothing in C.
I had a question, and I think it's answered at a later point in the document, which would be under F. But I was asking number 6. So an applicant for an STR permit shall appear in person or by authorized representative at meetings of the PC and BOCC to present the application.
Hold on, Kevin, I'm lost. I don't know where you're at.
C6.
So it'd be
C6.
C6,
All right, gotcha.
bottom of the page
Gotcha.
there.
Yeah.
My question is, and I think it's answered later, but I ask, is this 2 public meetings? And then later on, I believe, under the BOCC, under F, it says grant or deny the application is indicated at a regular scheduled BOCC meeting. So I'm thinking that that's only one special meeting, and then the BOCC responds at a regular meeting depending on the recommendations.
Exactly the question I had. Does the BOCC need a public hearing to approve or deny? So
We don't, except
9.
on the initial hearings, right?
9-10-4A says we do, but not on the renewals. We've already addressed that, just on new permits, right?
You gotta do it in a public meeting, and you'll have a list,
The initial application.
yes, you'll have a list, so I'm hoping
Yeah.
that if this is passed, that the planning commission will decide whether they can do 5 or 10, whatever they decide in one meeting.
Right.
So then it'll be a scheduled meeting, then you're gonna get a report, just like what Kelly's gonna send you for the last special
So-
use permit, and you're gonna do it in a public
So
meeting.
it could either be a BOCC meeting, or it could be a special meeting only to discuss.
Exactly.
Depending
Either
on
way.
how
But we don't have to conduct a public hearing. That
No.
was
No,
what I was asking.
That
Is that
was
what you were at? Yeah.
That's my question.
yeah, it's just a public
No, a
meeting
public hearing is only for
for initial
changes.
changes. Yeah.
Hey, Jackie, on a sidebar real quick, so Kelly's presenting that on the 30th?
No,
On
I am.
For the SUP?
yes,
Presenting.
Because I had a call today, wanting to know when that was going to be. The agenda's not been put out yet. So
no, it's the 30th.
it's the 30th, okay.
It's the STR meeting, right?
Okay,
That morning, your BOCC will be the SUP recommendation,
Right, and then
then the SDR.
the STR.
so are you good, Kevin? Did you?
I'm good on that.
foresee-
That was basically a question I had, not necessarily a change.
Okay.
Uh,
And then D, we have a red line, right? Everybody have that?
Yeah,
on
if deemed necessary by the planning.
And that becomes, that's acceptable, right? We're gonna put that into black.
Yeah.
And then bold it, okay?
Okay.
My next question was on F, and I think we just talked about that, but
F2.
yeah. So
Yeah.
grant or deny the application at a regular scheduled. Well, now, see, that wouldn't work then, Bill, if you said, well,
No,
we
you
could have a
can't.
special meeting.
You can
So
have a
it's either
special
gonna be
meeting, so it's gotta
regular
be-
or we just take
Should
out.
be a BOCC meeting. It doesn't have to
What do you
say.
think, Vic?
It can be either one, I think.
Right.
So
So,
Just put a meeting.
I would just say at a BOCC meeting would be great.
okay,
And then my question there was then, because under what the applicant has to do,
Say it again, start over.
Okay, the applicant, it states that they have to appear in person at the meetings of the PC and the BOCC to present the application. So do they have to be present at our BOCC meeting, or is it just the planning commission that comes to do that?
I didn't think they did, but I thought it said if requested, but maybe not.
Okay.
What page is that?
On 6 is where it says what the applicant has to do. It'd be C6. Says they have to appear in person or by authorized representative at meetings of the PC and BOCC to present the
See, you're
application.
making it generic.
And I thought it should have been if deemed necessary, just like number 5.
Or the way I look at it, I agree, Tom, but the way it's stated, it makes it that way because they're saying at meetings of the PC and BOCC to present the application.
But then then we were just discussing that it just comes as a recommendation. So
Right.
then that makes this wording not.
That wording is
correct.
not accurate.
No, I don't think so either, unless you believe they need to be here in person, Jackie, do you?
No, but they have the choice. Always
So-
tell them you can come,
May?
you may come to my meeting or you may
Okay, well,
have to.
Well,
Because I'm
No,
here on
for
C, it
number
says a
5.
shall.
right, number 5,
It says as if deemed necessary by the PC or the BOCC
Right.
on 5.
Yeah,
but not on 6, so it does
It's still
say shall,
redundant.
the applicant shall. We can't change that to may, because it didn't be shall may.
So can we add the wording on C6, if deemed necessary by the PC
that's a great idea.
and
Works for me.
BOCC?
mhm.
So the same wording as at the end
Right.
of number 5.
At the meetings of the PC,
If
if
necessary.
deemed necessary to present.
This is typically, this is what appears in the SUP process. And virtually every one, they want to be, they want to have a representative there or an authorized representative to present their case. Otherwise, people are going to be discussing their case and they're not aware of what's going on.
Mhm.
Right, so.
If you want to put that deemed necessary, there's no problem, there's no harm in that.
So number 6 now would read, appear in person or by authorized representative at meetings of the PC and BOCC to present the application if deemed necessary by the PC and the BOCC.
It would behoove them to be present at the planning commission for sure.
But I would just put if deemed necessary.
Well, by who?
Yeah,
That's the first thing they're gonna ask, Jackie, is who's gonna deem it necessary? That's why I added that PC or BOCC.
That was whether the
okay.
meeting was.
Which is, one thing.
That's not gonna hurt nothing.
No.
Well,
More than
it
ever.
might help us, we had this situation with that Sanderson, where we came in and he said, I don't want to present, I want to postpone it. Well, what we could do with the planning commission is say, we're gonna
It's up to you.
answer this question whether you have a representative here or not.
See, that's what this means. It says.
So that's a good
It
suggestion.
is. Applicant for an STR permit shall appear in person or authorized representative at meetings of the BOC if deemed necessary, and that would be deemed necessary by the planning commission bringing it to the BOC.
Or the
If
B,
you-
we might require
Might
it,
require
yeah.
And then if you can't show up to the PC, then we have an
It's just a generic
authorization
statement.
form.
Yeah, and it's
Right.
just a
Yeah.
statement.
Okay, so you guys good with that?
That's good.
Jackie, number 5 should end in a period, not a semicolon.
Tom,
I made that change here,
thank
but
you, because I would like that printed out on my desk.
same with number 3 technically. Okay, I'm good with that.
And
I didn't have
if you want to
anything
get
on
really
E.
nitpicky, see all the you notice the spacing between the number and the paragraph is different. Above on B, these are 1 dot, no space kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Format wise, it's all.
We've got too few of spaces in between those. Yep, I've been correcting those. Thank you, sir. D, I did not have anything, Mr. Chairman.
other than the if deemed necessary.
No, in D, section D, I was ready to move on.
No, that's what I mean. D, we had a red line in there on number 7.
Schedule a site tour deemed necessary.
Okay, I've already changed it, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because we changed D and F already.
Yeah, we were done with F when we went back to C, so I think we're at 910.3.
And that's just a generic statement.
Right. I did have a question on F2, but it's just that F2 cites section 9.1. It's the last section in C. Or
Did you already change
E, I'm
that?
sorry. I think we did. I just wondered about 9.1
C 9.1.
may be granted or denied at the discretion of the BOCC.
That's right.
So, yeah, okay, all right. Makes sense. So we had struck 910.4A. Is that, you guys agree with that or no?
Mhm.
Determined by the BOCC comes out?
I don't know.
I
Page,
have no idea where you're at.
we are on
He's on
910.4A.
910.4A.
Bottom of page 3, top of page 4, the top of page 4 is the strikeout.
Oh, okay,
As
as
determined
determined,
by.
okay, that's,
Yes,
they're different, okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
are we all good on that?
Yep.
Mhm.
So as determined by the BOCC comes out. So then it says in the newspaper of record at least 14 days prior to the meeting date,
That's
period.
correct.
Okay, all right.
And then B was just a.
We're taking out in addition. You good with that, Kev?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then violations and penalties, 910.5.
Right. Which I did have a question
And
on
we
that.
fixed any activities, it says an activity conducted in any form with the pending STR, just cleaned up the grammar.
Okay, give me just a second if you don't mind, sir.
Is that, you have a question with that, Tom?
I did, but let
Because that's,
me finish this and then. So we're taking out any activity associated, right?
Mhm.
And then we
And
added,
then an activity,
An activity conducted in any form with a pending STR.
and this is taken out of the regular SUP, which you guys approved it on the 26th, and this was put in there because of what happened.
Somebody making a wedding before they
at
hit the
the
permit.
wedding venue,
Right.
exactly.
okay, so my note here said, make sure I'm on the right one. Yeah, it does. Okay, give me just a second.
Hand me a piece of candy behind you.
We do that. Any comments? It's all, they're all the same.
So gentlemen, my note was in any form while an STR permit is pending. Again, it's grammatical was my question.
That was my.
With a,
two.
yeah, so I think it should say an activity conducted in any form while an STR permit is pending, not with a,
Application is pending.
It says with a
Right.
form, or it says a form, in any
Right.
form with a pending
Right.
STR.
Should be while an STR permit application
Is
is
pending.
pending.
okay, that's what I thought, but in any form
While an STR
while an
permit is pending.
STR permit
Is, well,
application is pending, right? Permit application
I don't know, it says sort of the same thing.
is a violation
Well, it
of,
says the same thing, just as reads a little better.
Well, then, but then you're saying, is a violation of the resolution and will result in termination.
Right.
Well, you can say may be a violation and may result.
May result in a,
Okay.
I think that would be
That'd be
better.
better.
All right. Because who knows what the circumstances would be, yeah. Who knows about circumstances? So
That's
it
good. That
says
gives you
now,
room to make a decision.
an activity conducted in any form while an STR permit application is pending.
May be a violation of this resolution and
Maybe.
could result in termination of the STR
That sounds better.
It's likely we're gonna have a
and could.
slight difference between this and what's in the regular SUP, but that's neither here nor there.
But see, this is giving you latitude to make a decision,
Yeah,
depending on what the circumstances are, and you need that flexibility.
So let's see, an activity conducted in any form while an STR permit application is pending may be a violation of this resolution and may result in
And could result in termination.
of the STR application process. Okay,
you want me, is that what you want in there, or could, or what?
Could. Gives
So
you.
we had May of.
May's all right, too.
originally.
It doesn't matter. They mean the same thing, I think.
Yeah, I think they
It
do.
reads better with.
okay.
Good.
And then that's all. Well, let me look, 9. Oh, yeah. So Jackie, I had a question for you, if I may, Mr. Chairman, about this 9.5B.
9.5.
B, yes.
9.5.
And my question would be, is section 12.7, I just haven't looked it up. I'm working on it right now. And then do you have, or are we going to have a penalty fee on your fee schedule? Or is it on there?
No, we do not have a penalty.
Okay, how are we going to address that?
Well, let's do, what you're thinking is, we're gonna add another section for penalties, or are we just gonna use?
No,
the
you're gonna have a
penalty?
penalty separate the whole thing.
But we have a penalty section in the whole,
For
In the whole
any
resolution? In
violation.
the whole resolution?
In
Okay.
the whole, so we
That's-
don't have to do a penalty. section.
Gotcha,
No,
thank you. Okay.
shouldn't be a
So
penalty.
my question was, what is the penalty fee schedule?
We don't have a penalty fee.
Well, it's, we set forth the Colorado revised
Okay,
statute that
and then-
sets forth the penalties.
And we assign the
And
penalty
we
based
assign-
on,
And,
It's $100 a day.
and you would have a series of penalties for certain violations of anything.
The
whether it's
penalties are all
STRs or
set
whatever.
by state statute.
Yeah,
Yeah. so
Dollar
we don't do
amounts?
that. Uh-huh.
I'm scrambling to find 12.7. I've
Oh,
got
I'm
clear off
sorry, it's
into the
right in the
damn
back.
airport. What
It used to
page?
be red.
refer to section 12.7 of
It's
this
a lengthy
resolution.
because it talks
It's
about,
red. It's all this,
What page?
everything
104?
106, all the red. The red.
Well,
No, it's not red,
no, it's not red anymore, right?
Uh-huh.
We
Red.
because it was approved.
It's approved.
Okay. Yeah, I just wondered if we needed, if we're going to say about this whole,
No, it's like a state statute thing, so we don't have to worry about
It
it.
says the penalties are in the statute.
including the dollar amounts or no?
No,
yeah. It's, let me find what we.
Yeah.
Usually $100 a day, preparation of letters to a violation or $100 per hour.
Well, that's separate. That's attorney's fees that we just added.
But it has all of them broken
Right,
down.
But the penalties, the actual penalties themselves.
Yeah.
You know, there's criminal, we're not talking about criminal for any violations here. We're talking about civil penalties,
Right.
which talk about, where are we?
Written notice, page 107, I think.
Well, I've got the old.
I'm zoomed out.
It is torture. So, yeah, my question stemmed from 9.10.5B.
Right.
And if somebody says, well, what's the penalty? How would we answer that?
it's in the zoning regulations. 12. 7 and it states it's in the statutes, and they're gonna have to see what the statutes say.
They would pay,
$100 for each. It's $500 initially, I think, or 500, no, between 500, no more than 1,000. And for each additional day
So
that
we
the
can say-
violation continues, that's $100 for each such day.
we could just basically,
What we could do is, Tom, is just put in there, if there's something specific in that resolution there, you know, is there
Oh,
a
see.
subsection on the penalties there?
I think he was talking more of the fee schedule that we do.
And then
But,
Clint said it's in there, so,
so it's all basically laid out.
all right.
And there's some latitude, and on that, you would have a fee schedule item that would spec it out,
No,
because it's giving you the
civil
latitude.
penalties of $500 or up to 1,000.
Well, so
And
what are you
then that
gonna
would
pick?
be discussed.
That's up to the judge,
Oh, it is.
yes.
Okay.
Because to enforce.
Well, okay, that
this,
makes more
You go to
sense.
court,
All right,
and
so
this
it's not
is
part of our
telling
fee
judge-
schedule at all.
because that's what we did on the guy that had his own septic system there, if you want to call it that didn't show up in court. I asked for $1,000 and the judge imposed a fine of $1,000 and $100 a day. How's that coming, by the way? You don't even remember the guy.
Oh, yes, I do. I have no problem with that one.
I think,
Waiting for
I
the
think we're talking
contractor.
two different things here. Okay? What we're talking about is if something goes to court, right, Clint?
But this could go, everything goes.
Okay, hear me out. 910(5)(b) says the BOCC may impose a penalty fee for any violation of an STR permit. Where's that at?
It should be rephrased, a violation of an STR permit.
For a violation instead of any?
Well, and it should say, drop out the BOCC because you don't impose the penalty. The
Yeah,
court
a
does.
penalty may be imposed for a violation of an STR permit, see section 12(7).
That's perfect.
Okay.
Could you get that to my desk, sir?
A penalty, you said, Bill?
Yeah,
May be imposed
yeah, may be imposed
for a
for
violation.
a violation of an STR permit, see section
Yeah,
12.
yeah, I'm good with that because
Oh,
if we're
that was
saying the
a good catch.
BOCC is going to do it, then we probably need to have a fee schedule for that.
Right, right.
So,
It's not the
Okay.
BOCC.
all right, sweet.
Good question.
So a penalty may be imposed.
Yeah, a penalty fee may be imposed for a violation of an STR permit. We got into the legal stuff of that last time, that we had to add the word fee, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what we decided? It's called a penalty fee.
It's just, the statute refers to it as a civil penalty. You know, you can want, if you want to say anything, it'd be a monetary civil penalty or a monetary penalty.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Instead of a fee,
Yeah,
a monetary penalty, right?
yes.
Why was that?
May be imposed. That's what it
Well,
says in here,
I
right?
mean, a fee is something you kind of, fees are something you charge as a routine administrative
Yeah, I
matter.
get it. So it's monitored. So this is a, yeah. I
It's
see.
not a
True.
fine, it's a penalty.
Yeah, that makes.
Oh, that's what it
sense.
was. We couldn't use the word fine.
Right.
It was
Or,
penalty.
or fee.
So a monetary penalty may be imposed for a violation of an STR permit.
Yeah, C section, don't just go.
$10,000 a day.
And you can also say, you know, as, let's see. You know, if you're gonna talk about the penalties, you know, that obviously that's already in there, I guess, that the permit can be revoked.
Hmm.
And I don't know where that language, the next paragraph.
This is the same as any
Or it may be
STD or
suspended,
SUP.
revoked, or modified. Okay, so it's
Right.
the next one.
Okay,
So yeah, it should just be a violation could result, or however you were wording it.
Oh, yay, now we're on the last section. That's
Okay.
great. That's the worst one.
I do have another question, Mr. Chair.
Which one?
C, before we go on, 910(5)(c).
Okay,
So it says an STR permit granted to this section may be suspended, revoked, or modified by the BOCC after holding a public meeting to determine if there's been any violation. What is that all about?
Okay, so let's just say that we have a short-term rental that is constantly doing something.
Okay, yeah,
Like dumping
violating the
illegal
setback.
waste.
Yeah,
Yeah, glad.
then what do we,
Then I'm going to have a staff report and I'm gonna bring it to the commissioner
Okay.
and the attorney's attention.
okay,
And then I would say, you need to see if you want to revoke it or suspend it.
okay. But this says we got to hold a public meeting to make that determination.
All your meetings are public.
Sure,
does that on a
this
normal
says
level.
after holding a public meeting to determine whether it is. I agree that it needs to be done in a public meeting. I just don't like this language. To me, it means that we got to have another meeting
Well, no, it could be.
to
any-
take this.
yeah, a
And
normal
if it can, then let's
VLCC
put it in
meeting,
there.
yes.
Yeah.
No, because all your meetings are meetings in
Well,
public.
What I think, correct me if I'm wrong here. What Tom is seeing, and I can see it in there too, is it sounds like we have to have a special
Right.
public meeting, just
Yeah.
like we're having
Right.
for the.
I'm all about just
changes
putting the
here
word
now.
during a
Just-
public meeting.
Yeah, or after a public meeting to determine, it doesn't even need to say
After
after a
an
public
STR,
meeting.
wait, Francis, it made us.
Just strike hold after holding, just.
After,
During,
during, so
Maybe.
we're gonna get rid of the word after
Get rid of after.
and put during.
a public meeting. And that makes sense to me.
Opens it up for any meeting.
Then it doesn't indicate that we got to go have
A special.
a public
What's
meeting.
the tone?
Sorry. I get carried away. Get carried away. So then STR permit granted pursuant to this section may be suspended, revoked, or modified by the BOCC during a public meeting to determine whether any condition of the STR has been violated. That's weird.
Well, you might want to say, public meeting upon proper notice being given. Because needs to be an agenda item, consideration of suspension, revocation, or
During a
modification.
public.
Why don't we say for the STR permit? You know,
I just,
Term of approval for the STR permit.
I think we can end that sentence after the word public meeting. What's all that other language about?
Because we just said it. Right.
I know, we just said it.
Okay, get rid of the
Yeah, you
rest
said it twice.
Yeah. So period after the word meeting
and go strike the
and
rest.
strike the rest.
Or that or put stipulation, condition or stipulation above, you know, maybe suspended or revoked or modified for,
I think that's great. Just keep it like that, short and simple.
Maybe, yeah, it's really almost redundant, isn't it?
to determine whether it had been,
It's under the violations and penalties section, so
well, you need, no, you need to, a permit may be suspended, revoked, or modified.
Yep.
After a meeting.
During a meeting.
during,
Violation of STR permit may be suspended, revoked, or modified by the BOCC. Put the-
That's why you gotta have the reason you're having a meeting to revoke it. It's if we have to determine if a
Oh,
violation
yeah,
has
I
occurred.
get
You
you.
can't
I
just,
get
you
what you're
can't just
saying.
whack the
Yeah.
end of it.
And I've struck mine, so I'm following you, I think, Bill. So you're saying after determining whether any condition, stipulation, or term
Was
has been
violated.
violated,
That's
right?
right.
Okay, all right. During a public may be revoked, modified by the BOCC after determining? That makes sense?
Yes.
Yes,
That doesn't sound so ugly.
After
that a
determining
violation has occurred.
that a violation has occurred.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense to me. So then the sentence structure, where do we put during a public meeting? After BOCC?
Yes, so the,
it'd be during, not after.
yeah, that would be
Right,
by the
during.
BOCC during a public meeting to determine whether, whatever we said.
After determining whether
A
any
violation
condition,
has occurred.
stipulation, or term of approval that
Okay.
has occurred.
Give me just a second. So I'll read it again. An STR permit granted pursuant to this section may be suspended, revoked, or modified by the BOCC during a public meeting after determining that a violation has occurred.
Yeah, we're just
Okay.
agreeing with it.
And then, if I may, sir, real quick.
On the same thing? or-
Yeah, I think so. So Jackie, this question for you, maybe it comes up later. Modify. So somebody wants to come in and modify their permit. Do we have language that addresses that?
What would it mean?
I don't know how they would modify a permit. I think that was just taken out of our old regulations
Okay.
concerning SUPs. So I would get rid of the word modify. You either got it or you don't got it. You can't modify the bathrooms, you can't modify.
Would it be
the
don't
people.
got or don't have?
I read that somewhere here in
Oh,
earlier,
it
it
is.
says if you want to modify this, you
Where we at on that?
No, got.
have to have a new application.
Yeah.
So maybe
Saying if they're in
suspended,
trouble.
or revoked.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, you guys good with that?
Yeah.
And take out,
Yeah, well, let's see now. Can you give them a conditional approval if they, something like that? That would be a modification because they were on borderline of not.
So if we put them on
party or
probation is what you're saying,
Yeah.
something like that?
So that would modify
Well-
the permit.
but are we truly modifying the permit or are we
No.
just adding a condition? I think?
modifying
Put
their
another
condition.
condition.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Get it
so-
out there.
So maybe suspended
Or revoked.
Revoked
or
Or
revoked.
revoked.
Right,
Well,
or charged more.
because there's a difference between suspension and revocation, right?
well, suspended though. Wait a minute.
You can suspend it for
2
6
weeks,
months
6
or
months.
whatever, till they get the violation cleared up.
But if you put them on probation and let them continue, that is a difference than you're not just suspending or revoking. You're giving them a chance to get clean again.
Yeah, but
And
that
still
would be
stay
a,
in business.
that would be a suspension for like 2 weeks, 6
No, that's what I'm
months.
saying. That it may not be that grievous,
Egregious.
egregious, I guess is really the word I was looking for.
So if I may,
Go ahead, Ken.
I'm going to assume that probably Jackie has addressed the situation and told them to fix something before she brings it to us
Right.
to suspend in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a better way of doing it. Because
Because,
puts
That's what I would do.
and then at that point, then,
Now, right? with
at that
SUP.
point, then it comes to a suspension or a
So
revocation.
that's
You're only gonna
usually what
bring-
happens.
Okay,
Because in our zoning resolution, if I have a violation, I have 5 days to address it. And then I usually send them a letter, and
makes
if they
sense.
don't, then Clint does, and if they don't do after that, then it comes to.
yeah, we don't have to put it in here if there's another way of handling it.
Yeah.
So if they address it instead
So maybe suspended or revoked during a public meeting after determining that a violation has occurred. Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
One that's not been fixed.
I would ask for a short recess.
Okay, and then Jackie,
Yeah, I was gonna.
I want to ask this question when we come back about, do we need a waiting list based on what we've done so far?
Let's,
You need a what?
A waiting list.
No.
Okay, so we're still there, that we don't have to have a
let's
waiting.
suspend it. We'll take a break for 5 minutes.
Mr. Cannon.
But
10 minutes.
But the sheriff got me tied up. All right, we're back in business here in the workshop, and we're in the last section of density. And from my point of view, I'll listen, because I still think it should be not capped. And so let's hear what you all have to say, and then we'll take this into the meeting.
I defer to my esteemed colleague to the west.
That would be
Or
me.
the Eastern Kingdom.
I was getting my bearings here.
Under the clock, how's that?
The guy under the clock.
Let's hear the arguments, boys.
Well, and
Move
I
on.
don't really have an argument, but I asked that question to Jackie earlier, kind of in regards to this, and when we were on number 6 back there. I don't particularly care for any of the 4 options, to be honest with you. If you do a straight line or draw a circle, which is basically the same thing, there's so many places. I can show you a Wetmore area. You put one STR right there at the lower end of Greenwood, and you draw a mile circle around that. You've just taken care of TV Hills, you've taken care of Wetmore, you've taken care of Greenwood and the top of the Dairy Hill. You can, the properly placed STR right there, one STR
To go up there.
will take the entire area. And there are certain places where that might work. And I think we've already heard concerns as far as a percentage because of the total number of dwellings. I think you voiced that objection, Jackie, before because of the inability to stay on top of that in a timely manner. I don't know. So I would almost have to agree with Bill on this. My suggestion would be to possibly go in the short term, at least, if we tried it without a density cap. And if it looked as though we were going to need to add some sort of a cap, say in a year, we could visit that again and try to come up with a viable solution to that. But I don't see anything here that is actually a workable solution.
We can discuss it in public, man. For that and Tom, go ahead.
So I've done a little research. I talked to our cartographer. I just went in, didn't try to paint the scene. I just said, hey, if I asked you if you could give me the number of residences in the county, could you do that? Yep. Okay, if I asked you if you could give us the number of residences by zone in the county, could you do that? He said, any day. I can do it. This was him. That's all I asked him, those 2 questions. He said I could do it by the county, by zone, by school district, by commissioners districts. He said, you tell me what you want. And he's got the maps up there on his wall. He said, these are the deals. Just tell me what you want. No problem. So that, I think, refutes what Jackie's concern was, that it's going to be hard to track that. And he gets his data from the assessor's office, correct?
And
So as soon as it clears the deed process, then it goes to him and bam, on that map. So I felt a little more comfortable about the consideration of tying the number of STRs to the number of residences by zone. I don't like it by county because the zones exist for a reason, and that is to regulate growth in those zones. So my suggestion is to set our well, let me, before I do that, let me speak to a point that you made, Kevin, and that is you were suggesting maybe we don't put any caps in it and then let's revisit it in a year. We could probably do that, but they have to have 2 public hearings on an amendment to the zoning resolution or 1?
No, we have to have 2.
And they have to be having
It can vary.
how many week
I
notice?
think it says 2.
Does it say 2?
I'm sorry.
How many week notice? 2 week notice
Uh-huh,
or 30 days?
14 days.
What's 30-day notice? I thought we were 14 and you guys were 30.
We could be, yeah, we're the
Yeah.
30, sorry.
So my point is that they have to provide 30-day notice and conduct 2 public hearings to make any change to this document. Not that they couldn't do it. And then I go back, here's my real crux of my stance. I go back to why are we even doing this? To regulate and manage growth. If we don't have a cap, then we're not managing growth. We're just opening the doors and say you can have as many short-term rentals as you want in any zone. So my suggestion is a 3%. Number 1, their language is the number of STRs, and it should say new STRs, right, Jackie?
They're all
Or do you really mean all of them put together?
All of them are gonna be new, right? I don't know, what, this is Vic.
Okay, I was assuming when I read this then, Vic, that we're going to allow the existing ones.
Mhm.
I think that's been a foregone
Oh, the
conclusion, right?
grandfathered in, yeah.
So then, I didn't say grandfathered in, I said we would allow the existing.
Wow.
So then to me, number 1 should say the number of new STRs should be no greater than 3% of the total number of dwellings by zone in the unincorporated portions of Custer County.
That wasn't, this was by another planning commission member. That wasn't the intent. The
Okay.
intent was to go out there and find out how many dwellings
Right.
there are and not newer or anything, and then
Right,
3%, and that's where you get that, based
exactly.
on that
Right.
19.
And I'm just suggesting we add 2 more words or 3 more words, new STRs, and based on the total number of dwellings by zone in the unincorporated portions of Custer County. We have 3,748 housing units in our county.
How much?
3,748. I looked it up.
748.
Now that's the 2019 census. Those are those figures that Dale Mullins sent out
Right,
from.
they come right off of Dola's
Okay,
website. I looked them
so
up today.
the figures
That's what they had
that
on.
Charlie Ellison sent me, and he said, quoting JD, Custer County excluding the 2 towns has 3,851 residents as of October.
3 more.
In the last month, I've gained
So,
that many in my
yeah.
office.
Well, that would be.
So the numbers are close, but
Yeah.
yeah, so 3,750, 60, whatever. The interesting part of that is the number of occupied houses, 1,782.
A lot of ghost town.
Some are residences.
Okay,
So that's my suggestion, gentlemen. This probably isn't a sword I'm willing to die on, but again, I go back to why are we doing it?
Well, let me ask you a quick question, because I'm not going to argue. What do you mean by growth? Growth by zone, what does that mean?
Well,
What is growth?
DOLA projects the growth of this county to occur at a 1.5% rate in the next 30 years. So that means people moving here.
Okay, so by our zoning laws, forget STRs, that controls the limit already, right? Because you only have 1 residence or 1 STR per unit, like 5 acres. What is it? 10 and
One
30.
residence per parcel.
So it's already limited, capped at whatever that amount is. But what we can always do is not allow something to be built on somebody on an open area, but
I don't know how you could do
I don't know
that.
legally how we can. So that's why I'm saying the growth, if you're trying to not have businesses,
Well, you didn't ask about business.
No,
You asked about growth.
growth is meaning people. So people meaning residents, to me, you can only have one resident, one dwelling per
Per parcel, regardless.
Period. You can't, if it was a residential business, it's the same rule. You can only have one per parcel.
But to me, that was directed at density, not managing growth.
Okay,
Well,
my perspective, please let me say something here, it's not the density as you see it, it's the density as I see it. I see it as 4 different areas. I see that the majority of our short-term rentals is out here in the East Hills,
looking at.
where we having our water issues, out here in the East Hills.
Right.
Okay, I also think that the density in our valley, I got water standing out there. I just went and did a septic system with, the septic was actually starting to float away.
You would have to actually build a mountain to put a septic system.
So they're
Which is what they're doing.
they're building a mountain.
Yeah.
It's 3 foot of sand,
And
but
that's
that
already
tank
starting
and
to float.
everything was leaving.
Everything's up here like.
So what I'm saying is you got to think of not the density, because I've been thinking about this a lot, because I think we already control density with 1 dwelling per parcel. I think
Right.
that's a given.
Question about it.
So that was put in place because of the water. Then you can look at the notes from Ben Kettle and see that they were concerned back there with the water. My concern is water, number 1, but my also concern is, what do you want this valley to look like?
Open space.
And we want open space. And what do you want that valley floor to look like?
Right.
What is your vision for Custer County? Read all these other counties. They said, we are turning into a transient town. There is no community left because the people are coming in and out, in and out.
And those just aren't I-70 counties, right? Those are
No,
counties all over
those
the
are
state.
small little towns. So, yeah, it brings in money and everybody wants a tourist that comes, leaves the money and leaves. But if you talk to all the other counties, and I called Fairplay, Park County, and all them, and they said, you better put a limit on it. So then I started looking, circling things, where they are. And this is your biggest population of short-term rentals,
Which has got the least amount of water in
So
it.
what's your point?
least amount of water.
Yeah.
It regulates it.
Yeah.
And the valley floor is gonna look what it is now. I mean, if it's 1 dwelling per parcel, you can't stop that.
Well, no, you can't, but
It's gonna look
I
different.
don't think we can say the valley floors,
Unique.
even if that whole valley floor filled up with 1 dwelling per parcel, that doesn't mean that valley floor is gonna stay at that, right? Because it depends on who sits in these 3
That's
chairs. They could
exactly
start
right. If you want
they
to
could
start
start
carving it up. they
doing
can decide to do
SUPs
that.
out there for businesses up to Gazoo.
That's right. But on our watch, my watch anyway, as far as I'm concerned, it's gonna stay that way, period. I'm not gonna
Well,
vote for any cutting
okay,
it up.
all right, because guess what we're doing on the 30th, right?
No, that's not gonna add more dwellings, Tom.
I wasn't talking about dwellings, I'm talking about SUPs.
Well, that,
Yeah, we don't have anything to say about the number of dwellings
well, on
out
the
there,
30th,
right?
what are you talking about?
We're gonna vote on an SUP,
You
modify
talking-
an SUP.
You're talking about what?
That's a different SUP that's
Okay,
coming up.
Yeah, I'm not
Get
talking
on
about
the same
STR.
plane here as
Yeah.
you're thinking.
Well,
Well, that's right. But the SUP, if it's an additional building out there, that's an issue. That's true.
Okay.
So that's
Yeah.
my point.
We can't regulate the number of residences in the valley. That's already been regulated,
That's
right?
right. The valley floor will look like it is. Unless
1
we
dwelling
start
up to
issuing
10%.
SUPs for some.
There's gonna be more 80 acres. I mean, we know right now what's going on. The H2O is divided up into 80s
Right,
and the.
Yeah, that's right.
Ranch
There's
is
gonna
gonna
be,
do it.
which
But there'll still be 80 acres.
right.
maybe the forefather screwed up and said, ranch parcel.
Oh,
You know, let's just zone it in
Yeah.
6,000 acres.
ask John Rusher if he thinks they screwed up. He thinks it should be 160 acres down there. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, but that's already been put in place to manage growth, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Or,
Already
well,
there.
to manage open space, really.
It was actually put in
And for
place
water.
to manage our water.
Water.
Back then, the people that put this in place, Fred Berry, Ben Kettle,
Okay.
they were more concerned about
Right.
water, and that was
And
it.
then they screwed up another way, and that is allowed these PUDs in the Rosita Hills where they didn't understand the water actually
There are no
because it's,
PUDs in Roseau.
well, I mean,
Subdivisions.
subdivisions. is what I meant.
But think about it, because
But
it
that
was a
just a
rush.
Too.
It was a rush.
Right.
It was a
Right.
rush to get in here before
But they
the,
didn't, but if they'd have known the water issue, that would have prevented people from buying it or even a realtor logically selling it when they knew there wasn't any water there.
you just gotta decide what you want this community
Right.
to be.
Right.
Exactly.
Do you want it to be transient? Do you want to be able to,
I don't think we can control that.
no, but do you want your neighbor next door to be able to have an STR? Or do you want to limit them? That's the thing. Want to limit them? No.
Well, and it might not be next door. To me, it's the overall impact in the county. But I'd like to divide it up by zone.
Well, you
because
saw
they're different.
Charlie Ellison's, they're 30% full with people during the year. They don't ever get them over 30% occupancy,
I don't know.
Kind of,
which is less than a full-time resident.
kind of speaking to something Jackie said, and it's a question, I guess, to you, Tom. Is this to regulate growth? Or is it to address some situations that have come up as, I'm not saying that growth isn't a part of it,
Mhm.
but is that the only reason we're doing this, is to control growth?
No,
Or
I
is
don't
it
think so.
because we have other issues that we need to address? And that's my question.
I'll give you my honest answer to that. This may not be the only answer, but it's definitely a huge part of the answer, of my answer to your question. I was alarmed when I looked and saw what was going on in other counties that did not regulate their STRs. I talked to those commissioners. The first conversations I had with commissioners was in the Western Region meeting at CCI that you're getting ready to go to in June. I said, man, if you guys do not get a handle on the regulation of STRs in your county, you will live to regret it. And I said, why? And then they went through their whole litany of things, which I've espoused for the last year and a half. It's not to get rid of trash or smoke or noise. That wasn't it. It was to manage and regulate the impact on this county, including growth, open space, and all that other stuff. Does that make sense or not?
Yes.
It wasn't a
And that
knee-jerk
sounds
reaction
better
to say,
than, that comes across much better than the whole reason we're doing it
Right.
is to control growth.
yeah, and
Because it's a more inclusive answer.
is this a tool to help manage growth if it's done? I think it is, yes.
I agree with you, except I did ask the same question to a lot of the other, like the South Park guys. They didn't have what we got initially either. They did not worry about the water. They didn't set it up. And so they got into the runway where these houses are a lot denser
Right.
together.
Right.
And that's the big problem. And look at the towns. Aspen is a good example, or Vale, because they're all clustered together and there's a lot of rentals over there and they all abuse it. They get 20 kids going for a ski trip and they all pile into the same little apartment. But that was because it was dense. And that's the problem with South Park and they've lost the water out there. Look, the water's gone to Denver and the branches are gone and they've got a lot of STRs now that are clustered together.
Well, to your point, Bill, here's why I haven't pounded on the water. Number one, in my world, I just think that's a given that it has an impact on water. But here's the reality of it for water to me. These STRs aren't going to impact the water, in my opinion, like I think they would have because now they can go to Upper Arkansas Water
That's part of it.
and they can buy water for every one of these damn STRs or houses or ranches or whatever it is. They can augment their water starting right down here in Grape Creek. It'll never get up there where it belongs.
Can't get it up.
They can poke the holes up there and Upper Ark's gonna put the water in Grape Creek that'll go to, or in Grape Creek, that'll go to Dewey's, that'll go to the Arkansas
You'll
River.
never see the impact below it, but
Yeah, they'll take care of it down there, but they're gonna kill us up here. Absolutely kill us.
And if you don't believe it, ask the ranchers that have to use that water.
But what it will do, it won't allow water use for residential or STR up on there because there's no water and they can't get the water physically.
No, but they can
Buy
buy
it
it.
from
Oh,
Upper
yeah,
Ark.
yeah, yeah. They're gonna buy it out of the Conquistador ski area,
They can't get it.
dump it into Grape Creek
You know, I agree.
and meet the,
But they can't
augmentation.
physically
No,
make it work.
I
up
agree
there.
with you
See, and
100%.
That's the point.
and guess what? That 1/10 of an acre a foot augmented water is gonna allow them to do. Change their well from an exempt to a non-exempt well.
Yep.
They'll start gardening. I just had a conversation with the guy yesterday, screaming, his neighbor screaming at him about this garden. And he says, I can have a garden. He said, no, you cannot. You're on an exempt well.
Yeah.
But if you buy augmented water, every one of those wells and buy those for 1/10 of an acre foot, they'll go to a non-exempt well.
And they can.
And the water gets into Grape Creek. And so
I agree.
I just think if we're pounding our head about water, we're really fooling ourselves, because I'll guarantee you that blue line augmentation.
Well, I'll
line
tell you what,
goes through the courts.
This valley sitting on a lake that'll never get pumped dry. It
So,
may not have, it may make a depression enough you can't irrigate, but you can sure put a bunch of houses or businesses on it without
So
losing it. We gotta get,
to
Close.
the conclusion, we're gonna talk about density the 30th. Okay, so all these yellow lines, I didn't make you a copy, and this is actually folded over. All these yellow lines on this paper is all the ones that are currently operating out of compliance.
how many?
We can just pass that around.
Counted 18 ones. What'd you find?
I don't know.
28 of them last I looked. Yeah, and I thought about asking Kelly to put this on the agenda, but I wanted to ask you when you'd be prepared to deal with this, because we need to deal with it.
So then this is the letter that I have written, but
Well, they
at
gotta
our,
come into compliance.
out of our last, this is a
So
health
why you-
issue.
Why
This
you
is
waiting?
not.
That's right.
But no, I'm waiting because I like to wait. We should pass the letter around and see if you agree to it.
When do you think you'd be ready?
If you agree to my letter, it'll go out tomorrow.
And you think this is a Board of Health thing, not Commissioner?
It's a-
No, I said this isn't a short-term rental. This
It's
is
not,
not.
this is out of compliance with septics.
Right. So
Yeah,
it's
so
really
that's why-
a Board of Health.
No,
No,
I don't have to go
Oh,
to them. I just
okay.
go to,
All right. Yeah, I get you. You're saying you're not, it's not tied to STR conversation.
No.
but I'd
Um,
like to start on, it is because they are short-term
well,
rentals,
some of them are.
but
Are they all?
all of them.
Is there anybody out of compliance? It's not, there are. We had that happen already.
Well, they're dealing with them right now,
But
right?
I want you to look at that letter. It's just a generic letter.
So you're not asking for a decision.
No, I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm just
So-
giving you a warning.
So what happens after this letter? What's the chronology after this letter?
They gotta,
They come in physically?
on the receipt of that letter, they have to make it right. And they can say that they will only rent to that or up their
Yeah,
upcharge.
this is good. There's no reason why you shouldn't do that.
And then whatever you're citing them on now with this letter, right?
Uh-huh.
That doesn't get taken care of, then what? They come in and you have a
They come-
conference with them, or?
They come in and then I contact Glenn.
There's mine. We gotta get Jordan out of here. So let's,
You work till 4,
we
don't you?
can shut down, we're gonna conclude the workshop. We're not making any other changes or decisions. So let's end the workshop and we can continue discussing that for you. But
I'm
shut it
gonna
down. Is
get out my
Are
list.
we,
there any,
are we in agreement then that 5, 6 and density, we're gonna deal with on the 30th? Is that the plan, or?
yeah, I thought we kind of resolved everything else in the,
I thought we just had to.
it's just the
fix-
Well, everything's resolved except for 6.
That's,
part of
I
6
understand that.
And density.
and density, those two.
I'm asking the commissioners, is that what we're gonna do, is come to consensus one way or the other on the 30th?
If we, apparently that's what we're gonna need to do,
Vote
because
on
we
it.
can't come
See
to,
if-
we're not
if
coming
we
to
can't come to a
consensus today,
consensus
and that
or
would be a decision-making process at that time, then where we would be able to come to a vote,
Right.
I guess.
I don't think you guys will be in a position to vote probably on the 30th if you're.
Well, don't you
trying-
have we had some
No, no.
presentation and then we're gonna listen to some public comments.
Right,
And that could change things.
okay.
Yeah, you need to.
Because you're gonna have to make those adjustments there. And then it sounds like to me, what I'm hearing now is that it's up in the air on density. So
Right.
you're not gonna be able to be in a position to vote on the 30th, I don't think.
Why not?
Well,
Why
we
can't we?
could,
Can.
but I think the agenda should say the consideration of,
It will,
because we might hammer it all out and vote.
we will.
Okay,
Like they did on the
No, I
other.
mean, that's the
It
intent.
could be,
We
yeah.
could.
Hand me my paper.
And if we decide
But see,
table it, we can
you're doing-
decide to move it.
you're Doing like you don't like to do, Tom, you're doing a contingent.
No, let's take density, for example. We got everything else covered, and then we come to agreement, or it gets voted 2-1. This is what we're doing on a density.
And that's-
we plug it in, and then we can vote on the whole
Right.
document.
And that's exactly right. And then we owe it to the public. That's a hearing. We need they got some other things we're not aware of that would change a vote. We can still vote or not. If it looks like it means that we table it because we want to, like we did before. We proved it except for.
It doesn't tell me.
Now, my question would be to you, Vic. So let's say that we make some changes.
Shut her down.
We make some changes. Does it have to go back to you, or can we